Ready to start. Will this be recorded?
Yeah. And
We took care of some other business, so it was okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. We are here for a Taos Municipal School Board of Education Finance Committee meeting. Today is Saturday, March 28th, 2026. For the record, it is 9:40 a.m. I would like to call this meeting to order. Can we please get a roll call?
President Flores,
Present.
Vice President Spray,
Here.
Secretary Trujillo,
Here.
Board Member King,
Here.
Board Member Concha.
Here.
Okay, item 3 is a Pledge of Allegiance. If we could please rise for the pledge. I'll go ahead and lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is respectful to recognize the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous people and their traditional territories. We acknowledge that we are on the historic homeland of the Red Willow people within the original territory of Taos Pueblo. This acknowledgement will oblige as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to respectfully recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Red Willow people whose land and water we benefit from in this great valley today. Item 5 is approval of the meeting agenda. Superintendent, any proposed changes?
President Flores, I don't have any at this time.
Board, any proposed recommended changes?
No changes. Thanks.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved.
I have a second.
I'll second.
We have a
I'll
motion from motion from Vice President Spray and a second from Secretary Trujillo. Call for the roll.
Board Member Concha,
Yes.
Board Member King,
Yes.
Secretary Trujillo,
Yes.
Vice President Spray,
Yes.
President Flores.
Yes. Item 6, new business. 6.1 is a financial review and presentation by our Finance Director, Dr. Rainier Martins. Dr. Martins.
Good morning, President Flores. Good morning, Vice President Spey. Good morning, Secretary Trujillo, Board Member King, and Board Member Concha. Today I would like to talk about the forensic audit, what we did regarding payroll, procurement, activity accounts, combining balance sheets. So that means finance data per fund, finance programs and leases. So that's the overview about what we want to talk. And we included also, of course, some information about SEG revenue and the budgeting process for fiscal year 27. In the forensic audit, the following payroll matters were mentioned. So as an answer to these findings, my team...
Excuse me, just a moment. Could it be a little louder?
Yeah.
Can you, the volume? Can it be turned up a little more?
Okay. Out here too.
So maybe you can just get a little closer, Dr.
Yes.
And.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
it's-
You're tall.
Is there a phone book?
But-
Maybe it's the robot.
Oh, yeah, I'm 6'2", so it's a little bit high.
Yeah.
Also, if you make an attempt to not speak super fast, it's great. It's easier to understand.
Absolutely, I
Thank
will.
you. Appreciate it.
That's-
So tall.
Let's try
Can
it
you
like
put
this.
something under this? and
Yeah.
make it
Yeah,
higher?
we are looking for
She has
something, but I would not.
Good.
Work.
That'll work.
What Assistant Director Cardenas,
Kinder.
The soup.
it think so.
Oh, I
It's
raised this.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, there's an adjustment.
There's-
No, I can just see how it moves up. Let me look.
Oh, it said it's max now.
That's how high as it goes?
yeah, but is it okay like this?
Did it go up?
That's the maximum, yes.
Okay.
Good, he's got a box.
Maybe that's something for us to look at. Anyone that moves a little hard.
Oh,
Does it work like this?
Oh,
Perfect.
perfect.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Layton.
We hear you.
Yeah. So again, what Assistant Director Cardenas and I worked on are primarily payroll matters about these audit findings. And that means, number one, we standardized the timesheets. So at the beginning, we faced a situation that the school district had, let's say, between 10 and 12 different timesheet forms, which were processed with insufficient information. So it was a little bit challenging in the first month to run the payroll. And after the standardized timesheet was introduced in Excel, it got a lot easier because the feedback was always from the field. We have problems with the accounting string, and this Excel basically guides the user through the accounting string. So we see the English, and then the English gets crosswalked into these numbers because it was, I guess, surprising for everybody. The account string is not a number, it's English. And it's just a code for English. So, and like that, now the timesheet creation is a lot easier for the field. And then it was second by the DocuSign procedure. So at the beginning, it was always that signature, and that means we were challenged to follow the paper trail. And with DocuSign, we are not challenged to follow any paper trail because it's all an electronic trail. And
Trying to help a little bit so it doesn't slide.
see. Thank you, sir.
But you just got a good idea with some tape there.
And so with a combination of the Excel and with the DocuSign process, we have a real stable timesheet process, which is, of course, a key ingredient of a payroll process. Then the separation of duty was a challenge. So the current, let's say, middle step solution is we introduce a segregation of duty in the following manner. Payroll, Ms. Doreen, receives the timesheets. She enters the data. And then I go into Visions, review the time data entry, and I log the data. So the data needs to be logged in Visions to be able to be processed in the payroll. And by this segregation of duties, one person entering and the other person reviewing and logging, we have addressed the segregation of duty. I said this is a middle step. The reason is ideally, and we are working on this for next fiscal years, that the school sites is entering the data and payroll is doing this logging mechanism. Because I don't see it literally as a core director of finance work to check every single timesheet. No, payroll should be doing that. But I'm doing this, of course, right now due to segregation of duty. No, that's one explanation why the payroll weeks my door is closed 1 or 2 days because I'm literally focused on that, and I don't like disturbances during payroll. I really need to focus on this.
Dr. Martins, but isn't that really required? Someone to certify again?
Absolutely.
After, you know, that second set of eyes.
Yes.
And, but it's also, I believe, they wanted, the auditors wanted certification. I don't know if it's a signed certification, but I know that we used to have to sign off that, and,
So it's following. The internal control system on this part works like this. Number one, every single timesheet needs to be signed, of course. So from the employee confirming I worked, and then from the supervisor that the work was indeed done. And then it gets maybe even one level higher up, depending on what the line officer decided. And then payroll, I call it, countersigns it. So what do I mean by that? The payroll signs this DocuSign document informing everybody else that, aha, this data was entered into Vision. So the data is now ready to run for payroll. However, a secondary person needs to go in there, in this case myself, and as said, it's a checkbox, you log the data. So that means I open the DocuSign and review if the DocuSign document is equal to the data entry, and then I log the data.
perfect.
So this is the step. But as explained, right now it's within finance, the segregation of duty. Ideally, from everything what I experience is that the school site who are producing the DocuSigns should also enter the timesheet data. The system is able to handle that. if it would be configured correctly, which we are working on, as you know. And when payroll receives the DocuSigns, and with a counter signature, we would lock the data. Or we say, look, I can't countersign this because the data is not right. So we would need to talk to the school side and say, look, what you sent me in DocuSign and what's entered is not congruent. Fix the data, then I can lock and I can countersign. So the segregation of duty is always or has to be established, yes.
I have another thought, and only because it happened a couple of times, if not more, times where there was an issue with the payroll. I believe that someone was being paid that shouldn't have been paid in our last with our last board, and remember it was and so where does HR come into the picture as far, is there any kind of certification from them?
Before the timesheet can be turned in, there's an HR recommendation that a person can do extra time. Also, you have that's a pre-step, so to speak, for timesheets specifically. The HR recommendation gets signed by the line officer, and HR say, okay, you are allowed to do extra time. So we have that on file. And then we get the timesheets and say, okay, it's on file. And then the time, as explained, the time gets entered for the payroll. And then maybe you go to stipends. Stipends is, of course, not a timesheet, but it's, again, a HR recommendation, needs to be signed by the line officer and by HR and by myself.
So they're signing off.
Yes, of course. So everything is signed.
Secretary Trujillo, if I may, and that's one of the reasons why and of course, this may be a different presentation, but it does tie in. We revisited how the process of communication is between departments so that when we do have a resignation and it goes through my office for approval and so on and so forth, that human resources directly contacts the finance department, but the IT department, because there's a whole, there's so many layers of what needs to happen, but we redesigned that purpose or that communication so it'll be quicker, so not to have that overpayment that we could potentially go through.
Superintendent Lee, if I may, in describing that process, have you, the district by chance, maybe put together a flow chart? Or maybe that's something that you guys could comprise. I've seen that done in other agencies where it shows the various departments, with an arrow kind of deal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you have that in
So
place.
we are able to create a flow chart. So right now, my main focus was honestly on manuals and checklists, addressing specifically the audit findings. We can produce a flow chart. It's definitely on the agenda. It's a time matter. So what is more pressing? So currently, of course, I would tell you, President Flores, yes, we are able to do that. The budget is more important than a flow chart.
Of course, well, as time permits and as
so-
you address your priorities, but in
Yeah.
speaking of flow charts,
Yes.
if I just may interject, maybe you could look at flow charts not only for, resignations and new hires, but maybe purchase orders and procurement and payroll.
Yes, so actually on procurement, I started to work on that, but I put that flow chart literally on the back burner because the payroll is for me the most critical thing from the amount of money and from the forensic findings. I understand procurement is also very important, but yes, we are able to produce very good flow charts. The reason is we have a program called Visio, which enables us to produce flow charts. And Maria, if you compare it to a PowerPoint or any other software, the Visio is 99% more efficient, I would say.
To answer your question, President Flores, yes, we will.
Just a suggestion.
Good.
For the sake of our, of the meeting, the kind of meeting that we're having, is that okay? I jumped in to ask the question versus going through you.
No,
Shall we kind of just open it up? It's up to you. How
it's
we're gonna conduct this meeting.
it's a finance committee meeting. I think if you have a question, either Dr. Martins, I don't know, how do you prefer? You want questions towards the end? You want us to interject with our questions?
So I believe it's better for you if you interject whenever you feel like, because then going back and rewarming something might be,
Just,
I want to be very respectful with your time.
So we can have more of a dialogue, just
Yes.
kind of, for the purposes of just this particular meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Then the next,
It's a working session. Is that a
Yeah.
way of putting it?
so then the next thing I introduced is I call this an internal control system in Excel. So what are we doing? We compare the data from the last payroll to the current payroll to be executed. So why do I do this? I want to know how much did an employee receive last month. And if I see a big difference to the next month, I ask, of course, why is this? Let it be up or down. So this internal process actually did detect one challenge, and that was a very minuscule money, workers' comp. So due to this internal control system, we detected, for 4 employees, we would not have paid the $2.50 workers' comp. So the money is actually not the important part, but the important part here is it works. We detected it, and of course, we avoided any audit findings regarding non-paid worker comps. These were new employees, we weren't correctly coded in benefits. But as I said, the key element is we have an internal control system. We review very carefully before executing a new payroll if the data is correct. So not only on the data entry side, but now before you execute this payroll, which is round about total payments, every payroll is round about 1.1 million. Before we execute this payroll, we do this check, and as said, it works. And I created a manual on how to execute this payroll. I could show you that, but please not in detail. It's around about 55 pages long. And the reason why it's so long is it's literally every single checkbox, every single step is described, that whoever would be sitting in the chair of payroll can take this manual and can execute a payroll successfully without me. It's that detailed.
Did the auditors ask for that, your procedures? Because usually now they're asking that you have,
They did
that you
not.
provide the procedures on how things are done in your
They did not.
institution.
Secretary Trujillo, we did not, because we didn't audit
They didn't
fiscal year
exist.
26. I have done this in fiscal year 26, and we get audited on fiscal year 25. But they didn't ask me for
They did.
the manuals I created. So now, but a manual, in my opinion, obviously is not good enough. So, okay, now we know what we are supposed to do, but that's the reason why we have a checklist. So on every single payroll, there's a checklist, which is essentially a functional summary of a manual checking off, did you do this, did you do that, did you file this report, did you file that report, did you store the data, did you inform the finance director, was the EFTPS payments of the taxes were what conducted. So we have a manual and proving to the auditors that we are not only having that paper, we have a checklist to say, yes, we take this very serious. So this is how we now run payroll.
Dr. Martins, I must commend you on the initiative to create a manual on this. I think what's real important is, with your time here at Taos Municipal Schools, hopefully we will have you for many, many years. But I always believe that when you leave an organization, you leave it better than what you found it, and you leave it with the ability to carry on from where you left off. And so this will enable, when that time comes, when you move on to bigger and better things, that they will have some direction and guidance.
And if I may, President Flores, Vice President, members of the board, if the auditors now ask, we're ahead of the curve.
Well, they're going to ask because I'm surprised that they didn't. And probably because we've been in such a disarray. But I know that in my experience, they wanted your procedures.
And manuals, process and procedures manuals.
It says your manual and your procedures of how everything is being conducted. And actually payroll is really such a critical, and you've explained how critical it is, because there's so many nuances to how different people are paid. So thank you again for being so meticulous as to how this process is being handled.
And President Flores, so essentially the workflow of what you suggested, for me, this is the best overview document to then go into manuals and checklist. But as said,
The
I needed to
checklist.
produce first the manual that we know how do we actually run a payroll, how does this work, and the checklist to ensure that we are really running it professionally. And I call it a little bit the cherry on top is the flow chart. No, but it's always also a good idea to start with a flow chart. But due to the situation, I focused first on getting the payroll stabilized and correctly run.
Thank you.
Then we improved a little bit the 1099 issues. We say, again, very important, Ms. Cardenas, to produce the 1099s. That was also an audit finding. So we went through it, reviewed the checkboxes for this one. So essentially, you need to set checkboxes and the vendor metrics correctly when the system produces the 1099s correct. For this year, we improved a lot. I wouldn't say we were perfect, but pretty close. We had, I think you reached out to the IRS to fix one upload, and the IRS was okay with that. You know, and since then we haven't heard anything. So I believe it's now really good. So we had a little hiccup, but the IRS was working with us and no issue. And then, as I already said, all timesheets and HR recommendations impacting the payroll are stored. And it's in a manner that we see, okay, if we run an example, payroll 19, all the documents relevant for payroll 19 are stored on the SharePoint site in that specific folder, similar payroll 18, similar payroll 18, similar payroll 20. So whenever the auditor asked us for a specific payroll, we know exactly where to find the documents.
Would you elaborate, Ms. Cardenas, on the 1099s? Is that for the employees from the, or does it extend to the vendors?
The 1099s are for vendors,
Okay.
anybody who makes over $600.
Over the
the 1099
$600
employee.
threshold,
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So then we have from the forensic audit procurement matters. So number one, we created a new donation form and a deposit form and a manual for that, citing the policy, but also a specific directive from the superintendent in an email. So this is all published on the web, that our employees have access to these documents. Then, as far as I know, since I started here, we didn't have any emergency procurements anymore. Then several TMS employees passed the CPO certification, including myself. And then we still need to address the creation of requisition and the wait for approved POs before a purchasing activity can take place. So some employees believe that we can just conduct a purchase order and then, so to speak, do the paperwork afterwards. This is, of course, a very bad idea. So we are starting to correct this and to stop this kind of misbehavior. And then we are strengthening the filing system for procurement on skill ERP provision. So we say we can attach all the documents of a requisition and all relevant documents for a PO in the system. Shall Ms. Cardenas elaborate a little bit more about this point? Or we can move on.
Is it needed?
Can you elaborate about how we attach documents to the requisition and the purchase orders?
So we have a system in place where all documents for the requisition need to be uploaded for us to be able to review the account string, all the quotes. We won't review anything until they're uploaded into our system. That way they're stored there and that no paperwork gets lost.
I have a quick question. Second, I think it's for Mark. Last time, years ago when I first started, I think we had a conversation based on that when we paid people that had been fired. We talked about, and also this topic about staff who go ahead and buy things before the procurement's finished. We had a conversation about doing a policy where that would be on the staff, fall on the staff if they bought things without having proper permission, then it was on them to pay for it. Did we ever pass that? I know we had a conversation about it. Do you remember?
Well, I think it's been a long-standing, there's been issues where staff, purchases items prior to a purchase order being put in place. I believe that, I'm not sure that there's an actual policy that the board passed. I cannot recollect on that, but I do know that it was gonna be conveyed from the finance department and administration that staff was to be made aware that there were not to be any purchases made without an approved PO, and if they were to move forward with making those purchases, and if they were to seek reimbursement, they would not get reimbursed. And I am happy to see that you guys are addressing it. I mean, it's a practice that I think across organizations you run into those issues where sometimes departments, employees will purchase various items without a PO in place, which will run into being a procurement violation. In this case, the school employees would request reimbursement from the district because they would spend out of pocket sometimes because they didn't have a PO in place. I think that's a practice that we're looking at. So I'm not sure that we have a policy in place in regards to that. Maybe superintendent, we can make a note and see if there's a way that the board could put a policy in place. Maybe we could research if there is one that addresses
Advanced purchases.
disciplinary process, maybe to some extent. Nobody wants to be disciplined, and we know we want to stay in conformity, try to do things right, but we always have those people that try to skirt the law.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
That is that would be part of the procurement training, because they have to understand that if they didn't requisition and the appeal was not issued, then they're liable for that expenditure. But also, for reimbursement, there's a certain criteria that can only be reimbursed. And I remember having that. So I don't know if it's defined in the statute that outlines the procurement, but there's only certain instances, but certain things that can be reimbursed, like travel, your travel. But again, that should be looked at, because have we had procurement training for all those people that are purchasing with the purchase or the do requisitions and purchasing? Because I know, how many do we have certified that we have had that are certified procurement officers, in other words?
So I know currently here in this room are 4 CPOs. So that is Superintendent Layton, Samantha Gonzalez, Nicole Cardenas, and myself.
And we have a few in queue for the trainings, because obviously the CPO, they only offer the courses every so often. So it's not available online at will, so to speak. But to answer your question before, actually President Flores and Secretary Trujillo, so there are instances where all of a sudden, I guess when travel is a perfect example, where we come across some hotels that all of a sudden you have a cost that, despite everybody's planning, something comes up and an employee may put something out of pocket, right? And then, of course, they bring back the reimbursement or request for reimbursement. But there are some instances where it's happened before, and I think even myself, it's happened where you just all of a sudden didn't see a cost that the hotel or the conference all of a sudden comes up with. But nonetheless, we do have the procurement violation forms that we addressed, so that when an auditor does say, why was this reimbursement? Because it isn't against the law, but it is something that needs to be addressed. So if an auditor does request, why was this reimbursement paid? Where are the receipts? How was it addressed? We have the procurement violation forms that have as supporting documentation that not only was the reimbursement made, what circumstances occurred for the reimbursement, and then how was it addressed by the district itself.
I agree with you, Superintendent. There are going to be those instances where an employee is gonna have to go out of pocket,
Mhm.
in some cases. And, we need to be understanding and, on a case-by-case basis, have
Mhm.
those forms in place or the documentation to justify and explain the purpose and for
But
that.
if we have that training, the employees will understand, what is allowed and what is not. And so I think that, you can bring in someone, I can't remember if, is it Tammy from the procurement?
Tammy West, you're talking about Tammy West?
She would, I know she would be wholeheartedly excited about coming and doing a training.
Yeah, she actually conducts the CPO certification.
Yes. But
so-
on top of that, on top of the certification for the other people, so that they can understand how we're conducting business. And it's just a good employee development type of, because this is what we're all about. This is what runs, this is a foundational component of our institution is the procurement and the public monies. That's why we're here today.
And what will help, besides that, is the documentation and like the flow chart and the manual that we're creating. That's going to help drive those particular trainings. So
Yes, and it just tightens up everything, tightens up the controls so that it'll make your job easier. And, go ahead.
And of course,
Yeah.
I do want to just put one point. We provide the trainings, we provide the manuals, but ultimately, because of that procurement violation form we have now, it's ultimately up to the employee to follow those processes and systems in place as well.
Of course.
So it's not a reason to say, well, we trained you, well, you have to follow it now. So,
Yes, definitely.
so thank you for that.
I believe Ms.
At the beginning of the year, our CPO at the time did go out to the school sites and provide training. And there is a document that they have to sign that they understand the procedures. So we have copies of those as well. But she did go out to the school sites to provide training.
And also, I think that those people that have had the CPO training, that they're made available and saying, if anybody has any question about how to purchase or have any questions, please ask the question. Ask the question so that we can get things done correctly and they're not wondering. But again, I think having Ms. West come and do a training would be excellent. I wouldn't even mind coming in and attending that session. So please let us know when it's set up.
Dr. Martins, the superintendent, one last comment. Ideally, when we get to a place where, as we progress, I'm not sure if you've put thought to it or if it's something you would recommend or not, but maybe each school site has a certified CPO officer there at some point in time.
That might be okay from a resource point of view. However, as the superintendent stated, if an employee, as Assistant Director Cardenas said, signs it off and still violates it, so we can have the best documentation if folks are not following it, we are not following it, and then we document this for a procurement violation. And then I look, of course, at the line officers to address the matter.
And President Flores, to answer that question, our principals are the next phase of the CPO component, so they can actually have a point of contact at the site. And then, of course, if it's deeper, then I would absolutely go to the finance department, because in reality, the finance department is supposed to be the resource, the main resource for what goes in and what comes out, what is the process and systems. But that is the next phase. I do have a director or two, I believe, that's coming up with the next CPO training. But the classes are every so often, but that is the next phase in, is to have our school site principals.
Excellent.
So,
It's great to hear. I think that's a very positive.
I think we're actually getting up to speed. It's, how long now? Is it 6 months, Dr. Martins, 8?
I started last August.
So, yeah, we are, it's a new philosophy in regards to management practice. So I think it's all positive, and you're building a foundation, which is very encouraging. Yeah.
I think it had been addressed. So
So the
Okay.
forensic audit had also IT matters mentioned. So the big highlights are, of course, OneDrive and SharePoint. Why? Because this is all cloud-based backups. So that means we are not depending on our own hardware. And in the cloud, the backups are reliable. And the cybersecurity was hardened. When the Stop-It app was introduced, we have a fraud reporting tool in place through USDE. And then but one thing, what I did stop was the project time clocks. You might remember that the school board approved time clocks, but nobody realized here at the time that the software was simply not ready to introduce this module. So, so essentially, we would have spent money on something which is really good, but we would not be able to use the product because the product wouldn't work because the software configuration is not there yet. My hope is that we can introduce the time clocks in fiscal year 28. So we won't be even ready next fiscal year, in my opinion. So it's not off the table at all. Of course, it's important, but simply we are not able to introduce this that fast.
Quick question, will time clocks be beneficial? Will they be more efficient? Would they aid you guys?
Absolutely, because essentially with the time clocks, you would remove the timesheet signature process. So the timesheet signature process is significantly more efficient right now. However, of course, if you have real data with swipe data, then nobody needs to sign anymore. No? So you have the data is already entered in the system. So you have one data entry less. The internal control process on the time clocks would be going away. No? So it would be definitely more efficient and more precise.
One thing to prepare for, in my experience with time clocks, is you will have employees who, when it happens, will forget to clock in, they'll forget to clock out. Or sometimes they hit clock out instead of clock in. You know, we have time clocks with the town of Towson. There's a process where at the end of payroll where you're having to do those adjustments. So there's
Yes.
There's always going to be paper and corrections.
Sorry, it's been a different process, and then we would need to address the challenges of this process. So I believe with the current timesheet process, what we have, my experience is it's stable. I essentially don't have complaints on the timesheets. So I believe this works, and it works well.
And I can help with that, President Flores. When I was one of my former roles, instructional technology specialist at a campus of 3,000 students and over 250 employees, we introduced time clocks. 2005, if I'm not mistaken, it was. But nonetheless, you had to have edit correction sheets, correct? And so there was a form that had to be signed by their supervisor and then at the finance department, because essentially you're trying to edit a timesheet that should have been done correctly to begin with. And so I do expect from prior experiences that you'll see a larger stack of corrections, but then over time, as people get more and more familiar with the process, then it starts to reduce because it's only for the outlying condition. But yes, it's an interesting transfer of going from paper to digital, and you can't completely let go of digital.
I caught something there in what you said, Superintendent. You were at a district in 2005 that implemented time clocks, and here we are, 2026 in Taos Municipal Schools, and we're talking about the implementation of time clocks. So I think it's due time that we catch up with the times.
That's the reason, President Flores, why I said I needed to stop it, because the software, the base software, is not configured correctly, as you know, and you thankfully approved the project, so I'm working on it. But our basic configuration is in shape that we can attach new modules which exist into the software. Now, I think I explained earlier that for me, the priority for fiscal year 27 is the warehouse module to address specifically a lot of audit findings. Because if a time roll process is stable, we address the findings. Time clocks, we are talking primarily efficiency. So first for all, for me, it's important to do the right thing. And after we are doing the right thing, then we can go into efficiency. So that's the logic why I would like to stagger first warehouse and another fiscal year time clocks. And on the other side, I wouldn't like to bite off too much. So better getting one product really well established and getting the change done and new processes in order, and then the next year, the next change. Not too much at the same time. We are not able to handle that.
You're doing procedures and operations, almost policy. You're setting up policy for the finance department, which is great. I mean, it's long overdue.
Dr. Martins, I have one, before we move on to the next page. I was just conferring with Secretary Trujillo. At one point, not too long ago, I don't remember if you were here or Dr. Layton, you were here, but the board had indicated that they really wanted to make sure that all directors had CPO training, all of them. So
Yeah.
will you let us know when that's actually been done?
So as the superintendent said, the superintendent instructed all directors, so the whole cabinet, to go to CPO training. And then the idea was one director with one employee that we have, so to speak, I believe it's every 3 months is this training. And now these trainings are staggered, but the superintendent can provide you a more detailed answer.
Yeah, Vice President, and since the directors fall under me, I'll go right ahead and provide that once I get the updates with, just like I did before with the weekly summaries. When one receives a CPO certification, I'll put it under there as part of the professional development, the next one, and the next one, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. And do they just have to do one at a time? Can more than one person be doing it at the same time?
Yes,
Training.
but so the process itself is you're pretty much out for a week.
I know, yeah.
And so having all my directors out for a week, it would be a little bit on the difficult side for the district to continue. And so that's why we're doing the phase-in component of it.
Uh-huh.
One, and two, of course, there's a cost. And each of the courses, I think about 500 to 700, how much? 650? About 650 per course. So we'll be phasing it in so that we can make it more efficient. But it would be nice if it was a one and done, but it does have an impact on the district operations, so.
Right. And we talked about the cost before, and we figured in the end, it would probably save us money to have people know what they're doing.
Yes, it also, but as all, just, I want to make this point clear. It also makes our employees marketable too, so it makes it good for our district, but each employee does get a chance to put that on their resumes if they need to.
That's great. I'm happy for that.
Is there have you noticed a difference? Excuse me. Have you noticed a difference in finance, just in the procurement, in the purchasing, that it's made a difference?
So
Just this beginning part, and probably Ms. Mondragon can elaborate on that, because in the past, it was just
So-
not.
Secretary Trujillo, at the beginning, the superintendent knows that I was slightly agitated about the volume of, it was not a big volume, but still any volume agitates me on procurement violations. And I did provide quite a bit of, let's say, informational discussions with folks, explaining to them, look, everybody needs to understand any procurement violation is a misdemeanor. If the money is, if the money is high enough, it's a felony. And I believe that my talks to a lot of people about what does it actually mean, a procurement violation? What does it mean for you? That was, I think, a big up call at the beginning when I started here. And I go to CPO Cardenas. Can you confirm that in the last months, I haven't seen a procurement violation, but you know better than I?
We've had a significant decline in them. I think in the last month, we've had one.
Good.
Secretary Trujillo, if I may add to that, and part of your question, in our offices as well, we've seen that. And I think what Dr. Martins has done and Ms. Cardenas has also done is kicking things back, and our financial specialists holding that line there, where if you don't have all your documentations, we're not accepting it. It's been difficult for our employees and staff members because things aren't moving as quickly as they would like. And I think for some of our vendors as well, they get frustrated with it, but we try to remind them, provide all of your documentation so we can move the process along. But, you know, it's slowed some things down. Some of our programs might be a little bit delayed because we're looking for quotes or contracts and making sure that they're all correct. But our financial specialists have been that front line. And then Dr. Martins and Ms. Cardenas have also been there to stop things from moving forward so that we avoid those procurement violations.
And I believe that in, in our last meeting, what was also noted was that if there's any kind of service that is going to be provided by anyone, that, that there is a contract that is reviewed by legal,
Correct.
because the liability, anybody sets foot in the premises and they get hurt, it becomes our liability. But also some contractors I have seen in the past have, they subcontract.
Mhm.
And that is something that is, we want to make sure that they're hands-on.
Right.
And so there's so much that the attorneys look at when it comes to those contracts. We used to have a standard contract that was prepared by our legal department. And they had to follow that. And then there was warranty issues of what the work that was being done, that whatever warranty we would never accept. I would never accept a contract that was prepared by the company.
Mhm.
It had to be prepared by us. They had to follow, and they had to sign off on our contract. So again, maybe we can come to that point in time to where our legal department will just prepare a contract. And
And if-
maybe we could get, I'll find out from the county to see if maybe Elsa has a copy, or legal has a copy of that service contract. Again,
Secretary
there's,
Trujillo, we do have a contract for the district that we do provide our vendors when we do need to enter into a contract. And that was reviewed by our
Awesome.
attorneys.
again,
Any contracts that they do give us that we need to sign on their end is exactly as we were directed by the board to send it to the attorneys.
because I know that it's been something that I've addressed since I first
Yes.
came on.
And
And again, it's sometimes we just need reminders and just,
Yep.
is it still there? Are we
Yes.
still following it? And the effects, you've been here enough through the different years to, hopefully that we can just get things done better.
Yes.
And correctly,
Yep.
to where it just, it speaks for itself.
And even at sometimes, if I may, the vendors, even at their impatientness or frustration,
Yeah.
but that's because we have a process that we have to follow specifically, so we don't wind up with these other type of, or address the other audits that so it's just a
It's
process.
curve.
Mhm.
It's a learning curve for everyone. And once they know what they have to do, it's going to expedite the process
exactly,
for everyone concerned.
right.
And then the vendors will understand.
Yes.
Even them, they will understand.
Absolutely, especially when we make it clear that this has been our directive from the board to our directors and our departments, that we need to follow these processes. And we do let them know that it does take a while, because of course our attorneys oversee other districts also, but we're trying to push them through with reviewing contracts and getting them back in a timely manner, but it does take a little bit. So as long as all of our vendors and everybody is aware that, we are following the processes and the directives that we've been given.
And if they want to do business with an entity that does follow procurement and has these practices in
Correct.
place, it's to their benefit, because then, as I believe President Mark has said, we want to use local vendors and we want to do business with them. And that it becomes a rapport within the community that they are contributing to
Right.
the process of and what they do to, for the schools,
Right.
and we need them.
Yes, we
We
do.
do need them.
Renetta, what is just an average amount of time that it might take for a contract to go to our attorneys and back? Just basic average.
I'm gonna say it's taking us about 3 weeks, 3 or
Thank
4
you.
weeks.
Okay.
And right now, one of our attorneys is the one who is overseeing the majority of contracts. And since we've had an uptick of contracts, it can extend to, I would say, about 4 or 5 weeks that we're getting the contracts back. And that's also dependent on whether or not there's edits that need to be made. So we have to send them back to the vendor, and then it comes back and the attorney has to review it again. So it gets put back into that queue process.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's helpful. Thanks.
Then the audit also addressed internal auditor. So we posted a position. We interviewed. We had 2 viable candidates, extended offers. Both were declined. Our salary schedule is simply not competitive to hire any internal auditor.
What
So-
was do you remember what the rough amount of that salary would be?
Yes, after I was begging to work with HR and the superintendent, I think I got to $66,000, and that's clearly not competitive for that kind of position.
Was that a contract or a
No,
full-time?
employee.
Full-time.
It would have been a combination out of AP and internal auditor report, so we cannot afford an internal auditor. APS doesn't have an internal auditor. APS has $1 billion budget. They don't have an internal auditor. We wanted to create a dual position, so to speak, reporting to the superintendent for internal audit matters, and the rest would be accounts payable. And then basically internal auditor, you get deployed to investigate this or investigate that under the guidance of the superintendent. And of course, I assume that we don't need a full-time internal auditor here. And then the rest of the time using it. No, but the matter of the fact is our salary schedule is not competitive to hire bachelor, master degree accountants. We are not competitive, full stop. So we have a position created. We have all the documents. As said, we tried. We had 2 viable candidates. I repeat, both declined the offers. As long as we don't work on the salary schedule for this position, we cannot fill it.
So you, if I'm understanding you correctly, you actually had 2 things that person was going to do, work on some payroll and also internal auditor?
No, accounts payable.
Accounts payable, sorry.
Yes.
So you had done, it wasn't just an internal auditor position?
No, because we cannot afford it. I repeat, if Albuquerque, Las Cruces don't have an internal auditor, it's definitely a challenge for a district of our size, this is minuscular, to have a full-time internal auditor. No, but yes, it's definitely always a good idea to have somebody not reporting to the director of finance or anybody else, but only the superintendent for internal audit purposes. But due to the matter of the size of our district, it has to be a mixed position.
Okay, I was just 1 second. I was imagining that would be a contract person that didn't work all the time that came in to do that.
No, that
And that's what I
definitely
was
is not
imagining when we
affordable. I
first
mean,
talked about it. But also, I have been told by people in Albuquerque that they do have an internal auditor, so maybe that person just left because they've had one for a long time at Albuquerque. Just so you know.
And I can jump in a little bit into that one. It was part of the discussions that the board and myself, along with attorneys, regarding a full-time or whether it was contracted. And it was an agreement to have it internal, as an internal position, not contracted. And then we sent the job description and everything with the attorney so they could review to make sure that we're cleared. I'd be interested to know the information that was, they did have one, because I spoke to the superintendent of Albuquerque when we were in these discussions herself, and they did not have one. Now, they have internal auditors for human resources, but that's usually for credentials when they talk about whether they have their licensure, what levels, but they did not have a financial internal auditor. And again, I would be much obliged if I could get that information so I can double check, but in talking to the superintendent of Albuquerque herself, they did not have a financial auditor.
I'll look back at my notes. I'll be glad to give you the reference.
Thank you.
Be glad to.
I have a thought that, go ahead.
You're like, so what is your recommendation? Mr. Martin's like, if Las Cruces doesn't have one, Albuquerque doesn't have one. What would be your recommendation to have that transparency and that accountability?
I believe President Flores already gave the correct recommendation. Document your processes, provide flow charts, provide training. And from my personal point of view, coming from private business, an internal auditor in a company is not only detecting fraud and abuse, but we are also working on procedures. So now if you hire a contractor, I'm sorry, these folks are not familiar enough with our software, with our procedures, with our knowledge what this organization needs. So it's basically not a person like the auditors we have to audit something. An internal auditor needs to provide a lot more, needs to be able to review data, so an example, receipts and all of that. But that's not enough for me. I would expect from that person to work with me on, okay, how do we improve this process? How do we document this process? We need to go out and train these folks. So that's the reason why I would always go with the superintendent's recommendation that an internal auditor, by definition, is also an internal employee and not an external auditor. I mean, the word internal auditor implies this person is working for us.
If I may add to, I think as we move forward in getting more CPOs throughout the district, you know, as that flow chart, those, let's say purchase order requests move through the flow chart, they're going to hit the principal, who's a certified procurement officer. Then it's going to be passed on to finance. We have certified people in finance, and then the director. So if we put enough checks and balances and training throughout the process, you know, ideally, if you have such a streamlined, educated process, there would not be a need for an internal auditor.
That's always a hope, but I do agree with Jack. Having an internal auditor, even with a 20% assignment for internal audit, is always good. I give you one example. There was a dance, now I don't recall from the middle or from the high school. I verified the receipts, the cash receipts. And then I saw that 5 receipts, if you go through the stack, no, they are numbered, that 5 receipts were missing. So that would be an example. Okay, it's not big money, no, but it's the principle of, okay, for this one, you deploy an internal audit and say, okay, where's this money? Where are the receipts? What happened? How can we strengthen this?
Dr. Martins, is our accounts payable CPO certified?
She just started, so no.
Started. Because, you know, when you look at the process, we focus on procurement, but then when that invoice hits accounts payable, they're the ones that are screening to make sure that everything is, all the documents
Yes.
are supporting that invoice. That there's a requisition, there's a PO, there's everything that goes behind it. So I always depended on that, but then again, I was the internal auditor because I certified payments on those invoices. So I did a double wash. But again, that was at my own discretion. But there's all these, like it just, what President Mark just said, you know, if we get everybody trained, that's a start. And the goal is to get an internal auditor, but again, get the accounts payable person, please get them certified. That is a top priority.
So I really love this point out of the following reason. This is the reason why my top priority for next fiscal year, if we are able to set up the base configuration now for fiscal year 27 correctly, is a warehouse module. Because we need to have correct purchase order, matching the bill, matching goods received, or if services are rendered, the confirmation from a line officers that these services were rendered and received. So if you have these 3 things in congruence, then a bill can be paid. So I give you one example. One provider for ancillary services writes me an email and say, when do you pay my bills? And my answer was, when the line officer confirms that the services were rendered. So I don't like vendors who say, I need to be paid. I say, no, you need to go to the line officer, and I need the signature from the line officer that you rendered the services. So we have already this. So we'll say, I mean, you see with the internal control system I built up in payroll, I built step by step up an internal control system also for accounts payable. But the key element, of course, in this case is this warehouse module where we centralized can receive goods, because this is also a weak spot, which the auditor certainly will point out. We need a centralized receiving area, and from a centralized warehouse, the stock needs to be delivered to the school sites or whoever needs it. It cannot be just a decentralized system and nobody really knows, did we receive a good, where's a good? I can give you one example, and Renata can help me. No, there was instructional materials delivered, I believe, end of 2024, and then I got interesting calls, and it took me, I think, 1 or 2 months to verify, did we receive the school box? So there was a mix-up, and Taos was challenged to even know, did we receive instructional materials? No, so I want to give you the confidence that our team here, we are working together, and again, why is time clock not so important? It's efficient, definitely better, but warehouse module is way more important now because the payroll is already addressed. Let's go to the next big thing, that's payroll. Efficiency. Believe me, I love efficiency, but first everything right, and then improving on efficiency. But your concern, well noted, but also, as you can see in my answer, we are addressing it already. Not in the perfect way, I understand, but we are addressing it.
Again, we're striving, that's where we're headed. And, but,
We
I
gotta let
think-
him keep going.
Yes.
Pages. It's getting late.
okay.
Security matters. So one recommendation I have for the next school board meeting, and I don't want to go in detail here, is the KEV system instead of cash handling. That's suggested specifically for activity and athletic funds, and also if IT needs to create fees for students. I will go into more detail in the next school board meeting. Why do I like the KEV system is Rio Rancho is using it very successful, and I wouldn't like to recreate the wheel if Rio Rancho is using this system to manage the activity funds, specifically in athletics, when we can just role model the benchmark, in my opinion. Then operations installed a lot of security cameras, established control access, and of course we have now a secure electronic signature for DocuSign. Yeah, it's on the agenda for the next school board meeting. No, but the big thing in Rio Rancho was also we had real problems with activity accounts. You also know that we are struggling with that. So I looked around in the state, and I believe Rio Rancho has maybe is a benchmark or is close to the benchmark. Therefore, I looked at their solution, talked to the vendor, and that's the reason why I put it on the next school board agenda for your attention and for your consideration if you decide to go with this kind of software.
Dr. Martins, I know that you're trying to move through this, but we didn't really touch, or maybe you did on the previous slide where it says capital assets and inventory.
Oh yeah, sorry. So we went already over capital assets here internally, and then Ms. Sally indicated to me very clearly I need to go with Alipio over the fixed assets. So I'll give you an example. We have on the books a value for Windows installed, I think in 2005. Very likely Alipio will tell me that these Windows installed might not be worth to keep on the books. So I need to go through these fixed assets with operations to decide, do we keep them on the books? Yes, no. And again, the inventory module is for supply assets, so not fixed assets. It's expensive stuff in a nutshell, and supply assets is the cheap stuff. So we need to have an inventory also for the cheap stuff, which we are not really good in. And on that end also, I believe the school board and operations, we need to work together to go through all this stored stuff. Now I will cite Ms. Sally, it's not my word. She told me, look, Dr. Martins, you are paying rent for trash. So I asked her, okay, what do you mean by that? You're renting pots to store trash. So we need to go through these pots, make photos, present it to you and say, okay, this stuff is not a fixed asset, it's a supply asset. Either it goes out for auction or it goes to the landfill. But of course, as a finance director, I have to tell you, I'm not happy to pay storage room for trash, if it's true. So, but that was her comment. Yeah, HR matters, finance in HR. We worked on a conflict of interest form, that was the finding. And then we deployed forms, like an example, the HR recommendation form through standardized DocuSign process, or the ERP Pro software, and then the vector training through Diego facilitated helped us, apart from the fact that majority of employees passed it, that passing of this specific vector training helped to get a slight discount in NIPSIA payments. Now, of course, any discount in a NIPSIA payment is awesome because the NIPSIA bill is over $1.2 million. So this is a really great success story for the school district. Payroll, so the actions item for fiscal year 27. So I leave now the forensic audit and I look now into fiscal year 27, okay? We need to work on work calendars and the pay cycles. This data needs to be synchronized. To explain it like this, until around about 45 days ago, the last payrolls were configured in a way that people would have gotten their paycheck before their last day of work. So that means it's essentially an audit finding for payment of service not rendered. So I needed to go with the help of a consultant from Tyler into the pay cycles, and we informed the whole staff that the June checks will be paid out in June, but not at the beginning of June, but staggered through June, so that everybody has done the last day of work before they get the last paycheck. So of course, I would not like to have the same situation in fiscal year 27. So this is what I mean by the work calendars and pay cycles must synchronize. Then the salary schedule updates are suggested for non-CBE folks. So one reason is in the salary schedules, we have too many where only one employee is plotted on. And of course, that's a huge administrative burden to have a salary schedule for only one employee. That obviously does not make sense. So working on this. Then we will be working on standardizing the chart of account lines. So TAOS has a chart of accounts and PED has a uniform chart of account. So that means if our chart of account is not one-on-one essentially aligned to the uniform chart of account, we cannot report our accounting data to PED. Therefore, PED would not report correctly our data to the federals. So that means I will need to download the complete chart of accounts from TAOS and compare it with a uniform chart of account. And when I see that we are using an account string which is not authorized by PED, I need to deactivate that. So this is a work to be done also in fiscal year 27. So Ms. Cardenas, how many journal entries did we need to approve to be able to upload data? I think it's in the hundreds right now, right? So this is a real problem that if this data, let it be now purchase orders, payroll data, doesn't matter. If this data is not synchronized, we have these tremendous issues, no? So, but okay, we are addressing it.
I have a question. Why hasn't the software where it isn't even I don't know if it's a software. Why aren't we using PED's chart of accounts?
No, yeah, we are using it, but maybe not accurately enough. So the elements are all the same, no? But the question is, in a specific line, is this combination of elements incongruent, so literally equal to what the U core allows us? So and this is something we just need to work on. And the systems are not talking to each other. So you have this manual step of what do we have, what do they have, analyzing, cleaning our chart of accounts up. And then next year, so an example, for next fiscal year, PED introduces a new program code 4060. When we need to create this new program code in our chart of accounts, we need to look up in what lines this 4060 PED expects that it now budget, actual data, and so on. So the core is not a static thing, it's a living thing. And every year there may or may not be updates.
Because to me, it makes sense that we should be using, that the PED should be providing the software or the programs that they anticipate, because you do your reporting to them. So why isn't our system, our software, or our programs geared to be able to have that information to where you're not duplicating what I'm hearing you say is that you're taking the information and it still has to be uploaded to their format.
Secretary Trujillo, I may be able to answer a little bit of that.
It would be very frustrating because I know that at the county, they changed a total different format. So we had to change the whole budget. We had to change everything to accommodate what DFA had because DFA was reporting to the legislature and they wanted the data. And it made it's complicated and it's complex, but you get used to it and it's doable.
I may be able to answer a little bit on this part. Of course, we're talking about the one that created the chart of accounts for the whole state. But what I did want to, and I think I know what you're trying to do is trying to say is about the synchronization between the chart of accounts. But the 89 districts across the state, not all use the same systems
Well,
of finance.
They should.
Well, that'd be nice, but, and that's probably what could explain why there's not a synchronization component. And then it's a reliance on the districts, but I'll leave it up to the chart of
Well,
accounts.
Secretary Trujillo, I worked at PED and I was responsible for the core. So now, guess what? I reached out to all 4 major software companies suggesting exactly what you suggested, and I had no takers. Nobody wanted to do, nobody wanted to synchronize the core data with the core data. I offer it from PED. I reached out to the vendors and said, look, I can provide you all the core data. So what I did do in PED is, and that was really novel, everybody has access now through administrative reports in OBMS to the complete uniform chart of accounts. You need to know the uniform chart of accounts of PED is around about 1.6. Now it will be, I guess, 1.7 million lines long. So that means you can't load it in one Excel file. As I learned my lesson, Excel is limited to 1,084,000 lines. After that, you can't download it. I had a learning moment at PED that Excel can't handle all the data I needed to handle. So, but yes, I agree with your idea. I worked on it when I was at PED. Software companies were not interested, so that means we need to do this in-house as everybody else by hand.
And Secretary Trill, if I may add some context to it, when it comes to on the program side, what we do see from our programs is that there are contractors who are working with PED who don't know the system. And then we tend to get different account strings that we need to start using. So it changes what is in the system. So it gets switched over, and then perhaps one of the old account strings hasn't been deleted, but I think it's a kind of a tangled web all around that needs to be cleaned up. And then thinking about that OBMS doesn't directly talk to our Visions program is another one of our issues.
So, but to address
Or
this,
PED's issues.
You're aware of it and you understand it, so you're able, and again,
Right.
it's complicated, but you're doing it.
Yes.
Secretary Trujillo, that's a later point, but to foreshadow this. When I sit down with program manager, one of the first things is I download for the specific fund of a program manager, I call it the allowable or available expenditure lines from OBMS, from the core, that when we are working now on payroll or on purchase order, I say, look, it doesn't matter so much what you have in the core with us. If you don't have it, and you want to create something, first you look on the UCore and see, okay, what does PED actually allow you? And then you go it. So there is a lot of learning here, and a lot of program managers are now familiar with the uniform chart of accounts. We know that's English, not math, it's all English. And we see the data from OBMS. So here's a very hard internal effort to educate people and to understand.
Question, Dr. Martins. I said, how many programs are out there? Just out of curiosity.
I would say
We talking about county?
Title
program?
I,
Yeah, the county,
IDIB, and
what we're
I
talking-
think he's talking about the software program.
Yeah.
software. So, okay, software. Albuquerque has its own software, introducing it right now. When you have our program, which I would say around about 79, 80 districts are using. Then you have Sky, and then you have for all the charters primarily, if not all, APTA.
About 4?
4 major systems, I would say, yes.
I'd like to add something for the programming. So our student information system across the state, everybody used different platforms there. They were using PowerSchool, they were using Synergy. And so what PED did, they went ahead and they finally decided we are just going to go on a one platform here. And I'm assuming that they will work on that too with Visions in the future,
I don't believe-
possibly.
I don't believe so, and I'll tell you why. With Albuquerque, you have a district to run, which is uniquely different from everybody else. And everybody else would not be able to afford a system like APS can afford. So if you go into a school district with, I mean, we have school micro districts with 60, 70 kids only. That's a school district, so-called micro districts. We will never be able. So even if we would get the software for free, these folks will not be able to run that kind of software. I would like to remind you how difficult for TAOs it is to configure this, let's say, in comparison to APS system, rather simplistic system to configure, how difficult it is for us to configure this correctly, right? So now just imagine we would get a system like APS. We don't have this skill set here and we couldn't afford this skill set. Why? A billion company is run differently than a $40 million company, than a $2 million company. That's the reason why you have different software. So in difference to PowerSchool and Synergy, that's a lot easier. So that's the reason from PED I reached out. We think very much alike, but as said,
Another.
You can keep.
So ideally,
Keep rolling.
yes, that would be great. That makes,
Yeah.
if we think about it, how much resource in time it would lend us to concentrate on other areas of the district if there was a secretization. And in theory, it would be great. So hopefully one day.
You know what, I think that is something that should be brought to the legislature, because, I mean, that it should be all synchronized if they, and they use the data, but it should all be
I don't think you can.
uniform throughout.
Yeah, you can, it's like every district, every community.
so
But everyone's different. I mean, you can
Yeah.
have a standardization. It's almost, lack of a better example, it's like a dictionary. There's, you have different words that are used in society, different times. Every district is different. We're not like Espanola. What's nice is Dr. Martins, you've been on the other side. So we have a nice lens here that you understand what's over there and now over here. So, we're fortunate in that regard.
and this was the key element. No, PED and the districts and charters, I believe more or less 2 decades ago, worked on this uniform chart of account. So that means every single system uses the same language. It doesn't use the same software to speak the language, but the words are everywhere the same. That is the whole point of a uniform chart of accounts. And that's the reason why I tried to explain we have a chart of accounts in Taos, which needs to be synchronized to the uniform chart of account, because that is the language. So as you said, APS, everybody uses the same language, but through a different system due to the unique needs. Then the next thing what we are working on is the user roles and distributed accounting centers. So this is literally one of the lowest configuration parts which we need to fix. I sent the solution already to the consultants and said, look, this is what we think, or what we think. And the consultant said, we are impressed. Yes, we like it. We can help you to configure it like you suggested. So we are on a good track because the solution presented to the Tyler consultants was the reaction, 2 thumbs up. And that will then help us actually, these user roles and DAX will help us exactly what you said. We have now a requisition. For what kind of workflow process does it need to go? You said an example, principals. Okay, let's make an example. A teacher puts a requisition in and it goes to the principal. They need to approve it, and only then it goes to the CPO. If the CPO says yes, then it comes a purchase order. If the CPO says no, it goes back to the principal, and all of that in the system. So that's the whole idea of the procurement process where I'm trying to go to.
Could you, DACs, what you said, what is?
Distributed accounting center. So in let's say in layman terms, think a department. The department, like a school site is a department, or athletics is a department, or HR is a department. So think it of like a department. And when you configure that this department that goes then into your chart of account lines, the school site, let's say high school, we do not need to see all the account strings from anybody else. So this is the distributed accounting system. So you say you in this department have only access to your payroll data, which you can approve, and your purchasing data, but you cannot approve from the high school a teacher in the elementary school. So systematically that can be avoided. And this is what I'm saying with this base configuration. That wasn't done. That's the reason why the time clock didn't work and all the other stuff doesn't work, because this base configuration is not there. And that was for me so important to create a solution for this and to present it to the consultants from Tyler to ask them, is this what we here designed? Is that workable from your experience? And as that direction was 2 thumbs up. So I know that we can configure that for next fiscal year. And then we need to learn how to do all of this, but I know it's possible. Yeah, and that was also the last point of the Tyler project. Procurement, action items. Again, I repeat, the central warehouse is for me, from a software point of view for finance, the most important and only real project I want to add on in Visions. We discussed in depth why. And yeah, that also enables us to have a centralized inventory, like Secretary Trujillo mentioned several times. We need to know what we have. Activity accounts. So I'm planning to use or to close all activity accounts which were not used during fiscal year 26. Then closing of all inactive or incorrectly classified activity accounts following GASB 84. No, we discussed that in the audit committee meeting. Then I want to verify if every single school site has, I call it a catch-all activity account for the student council, because if a school site has an inactive activity account with money, the money just sits there, but nobody can spend it. So that, of course, doesn't make sense. So I would like to work with you on a school board policy to say, okay, if an activity account is not used for a year, then it defaults to the students back at the school site where the activity account is belonging to, that we keep the activity counts to a normal amount. Assistant Director Cardenas, how many activities accounts do we have currently active?
I'd guess and say about 200 to 300.
So just the amount of roughly 300 tells you that there is a cleanup rather overdue. Then creating expenditure process for the activity accounts. So I made an example. Students need to meet. We need to have an agenda. The students need to decide on what they want to spend that money. Then we can create a requisition, can be approved, purchase payment. The key element is here. The students need to tell us on what do we spend it. No, it's a fiduciary fund. It's their money, not our money. Then separating the general account dollars from the activity account dollars in the 23 fund series. We discussed that already in the audit finding, that we have several activity funds where I call it, there's mixed money, and as explained with a checking account, to have in the same fund mixed caches is a very bad idea, so we need to untangle this web. As said, Kev, I mentioned already, we go there next school board meeting, and then I would like to verify with you the following idea, that every single activity account has a specific credit card. So if an activity wants to spend money, they come to us, or we keep even these credit cards at the school site where they belong. They can be checked out after all the other criteria were met. So why? Because then the expenditures on that activity card are clearly linked to this activity. So the reconciling would simply disappear. And like that means less reconciling, less data entry by hand, less corrections. It's clearly fine. So I would like to discuss with you further in the policy. Combining balance sheets. So that means in the audit, in the financial audit, for every single fund, you establish a combining balance sheet to see, okay, what are our assets and liabilities. So, and we need to clean this up. I give you one example. We have one fund from the federal government. There's a cash position of $12 in. So the Secretary Trujillo, you will tell me immediately, why do you have federal dollars in cash? Either send it back or what's going on here? And so, of course, I researched it. In this specific example, this fund was active from 2019 to 2022. And I checked, so all the expenditures reported in these years are 100% matching the reimbursements. So no, we do not owe the federal government $12 back. The next question is, why do we have $12 there? So I looked that up, and I found that in fiscal year 23, after the fund was closed, several journal entries were done, which I can't explain right now because I don't understand why somebody would do journal entries after a fund was closed. No, that on the surface doesn't make any sense. I know where the $12 difference is coming from, and I talked to our auditors. If we document this all well, that we are allowed to do a journal entry to get this cash issue resolved. And like this, basically, I need to go for a complete combining balance sheet to see if we have funds which actually should be closed out, but we cannot close out because accounting errors occurred, I need to dig into the content, verify it one by one, bring the attention to the auditor, asking them, okay, I can provide you this documentation. This is the journal entry I would like to execute. Are you okay with it? So that's the plan for these combining balance sheets cleanup.
And talking about the combining the balance sheets and the financials, our auditors prepare our financials. But what's important, and that's why the chart of accounts is so important, the reflection of all the data that they would need to be able to put in the financials. And that determines how our audit standing, correct?
Yes. But
So-
no, I want you to know that I'm taking our financials very seriously. I look at the data, and if I don't understand the data, then I research and I try to understand what's going on. And so for me,
I believe that when it's all said and done, and you've put together everything that with your understanding and your knowledge, the financials will be able to be done here. You'll be able to do the financials. That, again, they're audited and they're reviewed, but it'll facilitate the audit process. And again, it will reflect the standing of Taos Municipal Schools, correct?
yeah, absolutely. But again, as I indicated in the audit committee meeting, we are talking a time frame 2-3 year plus for that standard.
Mhm.
No, because you know that we need to report in the financials per gap, which is
Yes.
accrued modified, and here we report cash, so it's a different system. So the auditors have specialized software to facilitate the creation of financial data on modified accrued basis. So we would need to have that kind of software. We would need to establish the knowledge of modified accrued. Right now, my main focus and my only focus is to get the cash accounting correct. That's for me the most important. And once we have the cash accounting and all of that correct, and short of so everything what we discussed, Secretary Trujillo, then we can start to go into a modified accrued. And I believe only you and I now know what we are talking about. So it's really complex. That's the reason why it's again
Yeah, so
later.
this is just, this is just a different level of accounting, and because the ultimate goal of any financial institution is that the auditors form an opinion on your financials. But at this time, they gather all the data, and they gather the information and put it into the financials. But in reverse, the other way should be the standard, that they form an opinion on our financials, because that is what we should be preparing, and that's our ultimate goal. And I believe that Dr. Martins would be very capable of doing that for us.
In the far
near
future.
future.
No,
Good time.
far
Time.
future.
No, but
Our future.
Yeah.
we have to understand that that's
Yes.
ultimately, you're bringing about the balance sheets,
Yes.
and it lends itself to the financials.
Yeah, no, look, we fundamentally agree with the timeline. If you say near future, I say far future, because it's plus 3 years.
Well,
Yeah, I need to manage the expectation, what my team and I can realistically really do. And I said, this accounting standard also per PED is on cash basis, but
Yes.
financial is per gap. That's the difference. And the difference is for non-finance folks rather difficult to understand. So I think we can agree that's a difficult topic, and we have
Yes.
auditors.
that's down the road. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
I have a bookkeeper, I have a CPA, you have different protocol. Dr. Martins is trying to get our house in order, so
Why is
this
that?
is, we don't even have enough people in your department, so, yeah.
No.
But just to have a clear understanding of what's out there for us, and financially, it's very complex what the finance department is all about. And again, to take on that responsibility is huge.
And we are in full agreement also on the goal. Timeline is a challenge.
Thank you so much.
When what I'm particularly very happy about is the collaboration between programs and finance. So we have Title I programs, we have IDRB programs, we have UNB school programs. So Renata, I think we have what from your shop 25, 30 programs plus capital programs. And we started now, and Renata confirmed that I have met everybody. Okay, I have met everybody, so I touched every single fund, and I work with these folks now specifically on reviewing the actuals per fund or per program. That's the same, it's a synonym in this case. Reviewing their budgets, reviewing their situation of RFRs, reviewing their burn rates. So do we get the money translated into education or not? And then also a review of indirect costs. Program managers in general are a little bit challenged to calculate indirect costs. So we improved the expenditures, we improved the RFR management, and when we identified several unused funds, and we initiated the expenditure of planning. So on this part, you might know that Taos News published this single line item veto from the governor for $200,000. I think it was in the press. And I could tell the superintendent, look, well, no problem. I knew that already, and I was working already since over 5 months almost to get the ROTF and the money out of the door. Yes, it took me 4 months to get the ROTF approved by PED, but on the next agenda, you will have from Alipio a procurement suggestion how this money can be spent, so we don't lose this money because it's only there till June. But so just that you know that Taos, our team was literally way in front of the curve of the governor and the news. So and the emphasis is this close collaboration with programs and taking these financial data very seriously. And this, Renata, maybe you can describe the cultural shift better than I, because you know better what the culture was before and what the culture is right now.
Sure. Speaking from the program side, something that Dr. Martins has been working on, and which we've wanted to see ourselves, is that our program managers have a better understanding and control of what their budgets are. And we're staying on top of them rather than getting to the end of the year and trying to purchase everything down at the end of the year. Dr. Martins has worked with them so that we're keeping better eyes on where we are within those budgets. So it's been a good shift for us. I know this was a practice years ago that our programs had, and then it had kind of gone away as we had transitioned through different finance managers. But now we're back to what it should be, where our program managers are keeping an eye on their budgets, and then our financial specialists are helping with that as well. And one of the best things that we have now is that everybody has access to OBMS and to Visions, which, as you know, Secretary Trujillo, we didn't have that previously. It was kind of we would have to go and ask and we'd receive reports, but now we have that access so we can pull up and look at our budgets more closely than what we had been before.
And I want to add to that a little bit that, you know, when you're at a timeline for specific funds to be spent because there's a deadline, when I came here, one of the things that we found was we need to spend it within 3 days, within a week, or within 2 weeks. And, you know, when you had a whole year or 2 years, depending on what the limitations were. And so one of the things we're working on is you back plan, right? Once you know you have it, you know your time frame, so that we don't wind up purchasing for the sake of purchasing, as opposed to it's an intended format, you know, which is here's what you have money for, this is what you are supposed to buy, and this is its purpose. So I want to give kudos to everybody on working those timelines, because it's not just the end of the year. There are some grants that stop in October or November or December. It's not just the end of the year, but when the grants themselves. And so I want to give kudos to the departments, because it's addressing an issue that is long overdue.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Absolutely.
What I would like to add from my personal point of view is I have been told that in the past years, the culture between program and finance was not collaborative. And I believe we established a very good collaboration via problem solving together. The program managers are able now to enter bars into OBMS. So I trained them, I showed them how to do it. And by the way, Raul and I figured out how to upload bars into the system. So that means no data entry by hand anymore. So I'm really proud about the following, board. This week, Raul and I figured out in OBMS. We download the data from Vision into Excel. There we do the calculation what budget adjustments needs to be done on this end. And then we don't need to enter this data anymore per line item. So you need to envision the following. If you enter a bar into OBMS and it's 120 lines, that means you need to have around about 600 clicks plus data entry to get this in there. And now we figured out how to upload this data. That means 1.5 hours is done in 1 minute with no data entry mistakes. Then Ms. Cardenas and I worked on it because she said, okay, now we have a bar uploaded in OBMS, but we need to upload the data in Vision. She and I worked on an Excel. We can download the bar report, sheet 2, and then sheet 1, we have a Vision upload data. So again, key element is not only efficiency, if it's 2 lines, the key element is no data entry by hand, because that means no data entry by hand mistakes. So this will be now deployed. So Raul and I need to document this. So I'm really happy. But main point is external collaboration, efficiency, internal cooperation, efficiency. We are talking together. We are a team. We are working together. This is, I believe, a major cultural shift. All of this, what you said, is a consequence of this hugely improved teamwork, stronger together. As Superintendent Layden always says, stronger together, also here.
Thank you for that. And just to kind of piggyback on something you mentioned before, this is synchronization. You know how you were talking about the synchronization between systems, allowing more efficiency. So this is less manual error and more synchronization of files.
Compliance,
Mhm.
grant compliance and the financial are in sync. Because to be able to do anything with a program, you have to track, you have to use funds, you have to use monies. So, but you have to account for those monies. So that's where the reporting comes
Absolutely.
in line, because you're paying for these
Mhm.
systems, or you're paying for these contracts that are in place. So that reporting, that's excellent. That's how things need to be.
Right, and
Good, thank you
I can't
so much.
say enough how much support we've had from the finance office, from Assistant Director Cardenas, and from Dr. Martins as well. And
The reconciliation.
we're just seeing our financial specialists grow in confidence in what they can accomplish, and that's exactly what we want it to be. Is that, you know, we can maintain our offices with their support, and they feel free to go in there and ask questions and make sure that things are being done correctly, and we're spending our grants appropriately.
Awesome, perfect. That's a lot.
It does.
Sorry. Now I would like to go into the SCG, the revenue side. So SCG is the State Equalization Guarantee, and I would like to foreshadow, okay, what kind of revenue are we looking at? So the cabinet asked me if I could provide paper of this, and I'm sorry, I can't. This Excel is around about 15 megabytes big. It's rather complex, and it's very big. It's not printable, and that's this. So we need to go through the electronics.
If we did condense it into a page, it would be font 0.012, you know, so we try to find a way, but it would have been too small to read, so we do have it on every screen. And if you need some zooming, just let us know and we'll find a way.
So how is the SCG working? You have ADFD membership. You have 120 FD membership. The ADFD membership is already accepted and certified with PED. Right now, PED is working on certifying the 120 FD membership. However, of course, we have our data, therefore I plugged in the data we have. But to remember, ADFD is certified, so fixed 120 FD. There might be a little bit movement, but to get a big picture overview, it's a really good projection, okay? So now, as you can see, for every single grade, we have student numbers, and then PED calculates the student numbers into program units. That's the units. Now, you see that in column A, B, So, okay, you see already that how many columns I have to use. So we are on column AB, and that's the units, and AE, that's the program cost. So here we can see that in pre-K and kindergarten, TAOS will receive round about 886 on a little bit outdated projection, and I come later to you why it's a little bit outdated, so it will be looking a little bit better. But in comparison to last year, that would mean in this projection essentially a $100,000 decrease, which is basically a translation of how many kids we lost.
I need to be able to see that. What is the difference? We're down by how much?
So basically, I compare this data to this sheet.
Because I can't see it that far.
So this is the SEG from last year. So I compare this data,
Wait, this other way.
this one.
This is what we're short, correct?
Less,
I mean, not short from what,
less revenue.
less.
Less revenue, yes. But as said, it will be looking a little bit better because we got a new program unit value. So here I had the latest update, but yesterday the secretary sent out a new initial value and I didn't know that. But I need to update this and I can update this later on. But you have an impression, yes. So primarily the issue is we are losing students, and if we are losing students, it has a direct impact on these program units. We'll say on money. So like that, basically here, these are called the basic units. So these basic units is from 1st grade to 12th grade. So as you can see, overall, we are losing students. We get less revenue. And now, theoretically, we would have $540,000 less. I call it in general education. Now there's something positive to report. The TCI, the Teacher Cost Index, this is data which I personally entered into OBMS and it was certified by PED. We have an increase of 2%. So basically, I collaborate with HR to identify, do we have a level 1, 2, or 3 teacher and how many years of experience we have. And then I obviously very carefully enter this data into the system. And then the outcome was that we have a 2% increase. So that means in this, we didn't have a loss of, so to speak, over $600,000, but the real less revenue is $400,000 less. So we have, so to speak, two counteracting forces here. Less students, but an increased TCI, and that merged together means, okay, we got there. Here, again, one key element is this accurate reporting. If we do not report accurately our student data on 40th, 80th, and 20th, everybody needs to understand it has a direct impact on our revenue for the next year. The same is also true if we are not very carefully entering the TCI data, then you have a direct impact directly on your revenue. So that's the reason why data, what I need to enter, like the TCI, it's not my data, but I work then with Dr. William together, of course, to meticulously enter this data correctly. Look, it's not in the red. It's less revenue, less revenue. No, so yes, that is the basic education.
Was not, it's red in your picture. That's what I had. That's K through 12. That's all this
Pre-K.
pre-K through.
Pre-K to 12.
Okay, thank you.
And these are called the basic units with the TCI adjustment.
Thank you.
So let's go now into the special education units.
But you need to tweak it, right, Dr. Martins? You're saying you got some data.
I need to tweak the unit value, yes. And we can do that later, also live. If you want to see the result live, we can do that live. So special education. So we have A, B, C, and D students, and then A, B gifted, C gifted, and D gifted, and then we have twice exceptional. So these are the classifications per PED, and for the funding formula, the law provides us funding for these student groups, and it looks like this. We have here the pre-K people now. So you can see that pre-K has a huge increase of special education funding. And then overall in the student area, it's, let's say, rather stable. And now I would like you to be aware about this very important point, ancillary FTE. So when I looked at the data, I told the special education department, please review meticulously the ancillary FTE, because if there's a data reporting mistake or not well reported data, that has a huge impact. So Dr. Malacke and Ms. Ortega meticulously reviewed the data and simply reported accurate data. And that explains this huge jump, because we detected that based on the data, we have a little bit over 3 FTE more. And this 3 translates into $600,000. So then everybody understood why I said that this data is extremely important, and I want everybody to focus on this data point, because it's that important in the funding formula. And you might know that I was the deputy director of school budget, so that means I know the funded run, I know the SCG formula to the bottom.
That's what we say in English. To the T.
Yep. So that means in special education, we have a huge increase in revenue. And so again, the student population is rather stable overall, and it's simply by accurate reporting. Again, my emphasis is we need to report data accurately. So then let's go back. The next units are bilingual units, our bilingual program units. As you can see, we have lost $120,000 in the bilingual program in revenues. In fine arts, $18,000, that went down, again, student-driven. Now in elementary PE, we have a Sonder factor, because Renata was able with Dr. William to hire enough PE teachers, and therefore we get more PE units. So it's not student-related, it was literally HR-related, the problem which Ms. Mondragon and Dr. Royal resolved. And size adjustment units. So that means we are looking now at school class sizes. Here I want you to make you aware that Arroyo del Norte is the only school which receives school size adjustment units. The reason is, if a school is below 200 students, then you receive these units. Now, following my experience, the maximum amount on school size adjustment units is 100 kids. So basically, you start to get money below 200, you start to get money if you have more than 1 kid, and so to speak, the financially sweet spot is 100. Now, due to the math behind this SCG, there's a little bit of a plateau, let's say between 80 and 120 students, you get, so to speak, rather close to the optimum point or maximum revenue. Now you need to know following. If you would have 115 students in the school, we would essentially get almost a similar amount of school size adjustment units, but the school obviously would create 34 more student units. No? So they say, if a school falls below 80 kids, then it's getting financially almost not viable anymore. Because then you don't have enough basic units, and your school size adjustment units are also dropping. So we need to be really careful how we staff our students to schools. So I personally believe we cannot allow any school site to drop below 80 students, or you will have a very challenging topic of school closing due to financial data on your desk. So this is something to consider when planning where do our students go to school and how can we keep school alive. So personal point of view, I would like to see all schools above 100.
Dr. Martin, so with that being said, currently Rosedale Norte sits at 91 students, is that correct?
That's the data, yes. I mean, it can be now de facto different, because if students are coming after the 120th day, you pay the bill to educate them, but you don't get any funding. So I don't know what the correct number right now is. But from a funding point of view, that was it.
So you're saying if it drops below 80, then we have to possibly consider.
We are already challenged, no? So it's difficult to run a small school, no? But if it's going below 80, it's getting really, really really difficult.
So right now, this, President Flores, these discussions are occurring within the team to find a way so that we don't have to present those type of difficult decisions. But it is a topic that is being discussed currently because of the specific funding formula.
President
that
Flores,
was
if I
my
may, we've
question.
been discussing this, I would say for a few weeks now, and really it goes to what Dr. Martins has been able to put together, that we have a clear idea of our budget and clear reporting that we've done. So going back to the redistricting, that is something that we're taking a look at and exploring all options for the district, what would be the most viable, so that we're not looking at closing. We want to keep our school environments in place because it's important to our community, but how can we better support them as the school district?
So the whole idea is to avoid this discussion, but through strategic planning to say, okay, how many students are going into which school district? How is the busing done? That we can keep all schools open, because my understanding is that's the intention of the school board to keep all schools open, correct?
If we can
So-
afford it.
If we can, and we can, if we,
Need to be in a safe zone.
Well, at this point, I do want to walk it back just a little bit to remind everybody that we are in that preliminary discussion. At this point, we're looking at their budgets and seeing how that sustainability is for them, at what number they are. However, we would like to see them increase their enrollment. That, the school was built, I think, for 200 and some students that they could house. So we worked some numbers. I think we would have to get up to 115 would be.
from a finance point of view, 115 is an amazing number
That's our
because
sweet spot for it,
it
so.
works for everything. It works from the amount of classes. It works from the finances. No, that would be, of course, great. But here the key, I believe, is the transparency this team is providing you, this ability to plan strategically. Okay, goal is keep all schools open. Okay, how do we do this? And this enables us, so this SCG analysis, I believe, enables us all as a team to keep this vision, all schools open, clearly viable. We can do it. We just need to think about it.
So any options right now is preliminary, because that's the parts that we need to discuss. But going back to Dr. Martin's point, we wanted to emphasize what we're looking at so that we can avoid.
Just to clarify, those strategically, if Arroyos continues to decrease in enrollment down the road at some point in time, there may be that discussion that needs to be had about possibly.
I personally believe, President Flores, that discussion can be avoided for a long time because Taos has enough kids in the elementaries and we have 3 elementary schools. Then it's a question of do we use the complete space of an elementary school, so we do not need to go the Questa route. No, Questa closed the school because it wasn't viable for them. I don't believe that Taos is there. It's just like we need to think about it and not say, okay, Arroyos can reduce and we don't do nothing about. So we have enough kids, we have buses, we have options. The key is we know we have a challenge and we can address it. But I don't see this discussion literally on the forefront at all, no.
And Superintendent, it was mentioned like redistricting and through that process, if certain kids fell within the Arroyos district, they would be required to go to that school.
Correct. And so those are some of the preliminary ideas that we're discussing between all the different departments and directors to see what options that we have. And once we have those options solidified, based on the actual data, we'll be bringing some of those in future meetings for sure.
I have a question and a comment. Two questions. Who's on the commit, who's discussing this? You?
My
Dr.
cabinet,
Ling?
myself and the cabinet.
Okay, the whole cabinet?
Mhm.
Okay, and for how long have you been discussing that?
I would say it's been about 3 weeks that we have.
Gotcha.
4 weeks. It
Just a
started with
concern off the top. Arroyos consistently of our district schools has the better results.
Mhm.
And so that's a concern that we need to somehow marry the idea of results and the numbers and stuff.
Well, Vice President Spray, if I may, and I'll address this one, Renata, because I think I know where you're going to go with this one. but our recent NMVista scores actually shows the opposite. The scores at Arroyos have declined. And so this is the part where we're trying to address this.
Consistently, though, over the last however
This
many
past
years.
year,
they've been-
no, this
yeah.
past year, it actually been in the last 3 years.
The other thing, I would like at some point to see an assessment of the buildings that we have, that we currently own, and the condition of them, and how much money annually, I mean, how much money we think we would need to fix them. And we were told 4 years ago, we probably needed to bring down the number of buildings that we operate. We might need to do that because of the declining enrollment. So that would be a good thing for the board also to have a
And I
conversation
think,
with.
to your
about.
point, Vice President Spray, this is why it's important for us to look at the entire budget, because it's, the small school size adjustment is part of it. We're taking, and this is why it's the cabinet that's working on this right now, is because we're looking at all aspects of it. Not just, the school and the student numbers, but like Dr. Martin said, looking at our programming and are we making sure that we had everything reported correctly, looking at our nutrition, staffing, all of those pieces. And this is usually the conversation that we start having now around this time, is what is staffing looking like for the district and how we can start planning for the future. We just haven't had as much information as we have right now because of, Dr. Martins has put together some really good budgets for the cabinet to have really informed conversations and be able to bring those informed conversations to you as well.
So I
Okay,
have been
thank you.
told that this 910B5 was never really demonstrated and shown to you. I don't know if somebody showed you in detail how the SEG works in this kind of detail to provide you the intelligence to see, aha, we don't need to close schools. I firmly believe we don't. We just need to plan.
This is the first time
Right.
that in my history here that we've been so in-depth with the financial presentations. I'm very appreciative of it. And it'll allow for, more better understanding for the board. Real quick, I just have a question to go back, Superintendent. Could we plan to have at a future board meeting an in-depth review of our new NMVista scores? I know that they were presented this year as to what they were for this year, but could we do an analysis that looks over the course of the next 3 years?
We definitely can. In fact, that's usually part of our rotations now that we've got the full numbers. But yes, absolutely, we'll have that with part of the instructional program.
Okay, and Vice President Spray,
If I may, President Flores, would you like it something similar to what we are today, in that it's a specific focus on instruction? Is that something that we could do maybe on a Saturday or afternoon where we can review NMVista scores?
I'd like to maybe see it at our next board meeting if time allows, if there's enough preparation time.
My recommendation would be at the end of April, only because it does take some time to prepare it. And so we're already finalizing the agenda for the 8th, but at least at minimum that one.
and Vice President Spray, just was it yesterday that we were having the RFP for the Facility Master Plan Conference? Thursday. On Thursday, North House published the RFP for the Facility Master Plan, addressing exactly what you said. What are our facilities on, what's going on? So it's already in motion. So what you asked for is already in motion. And
Right.
the Superintendent Layton and Alipio joined forces with PSUC. It's a joint effort. It's not only us. The state experts are on this. We reviewed the scores. So, but Alipio would be able to address it way better than I, because he is in the weeds of this. But main message is what you asked for is already in motion before you even ask.
Okay, great. Also with the bond money coming through eventually, that might affect which buildings we put the money into or whatever. We might it's good to have all this information ahead of time.
Actually,
That's what I'm saying.
I think the timing couldn't be better.
Right.
Um,
Thank you.
in regards of just having this awareness, and we just have to start putting our information, it's a KNLW. We need to be more informative in regards to the community. People are going to see the new school, the new middle school is gonna be a huge draw. So we just have to, and I'm sure there's people in the industry that can help us put this information to the community, because Taos is always changing. I mean, we have a couple business owners on the board, and sometimes you assume people know your business. No, they need to be informed. They may be right in town, you know, and you got to remind them, hey, we're here. There's all these different pathways that you can share with people, and one of the things I think the board needs to address in regards to bullying, actually say that we are aware of it. House is a friendly school environment, because that's probably the biggest concern I think we have of all these charter schools. I know this because my family, you know, we're in charter schools for a long time, and people, you know, there's nothing more important than their kids and their environment. So we can message that to the community with a new shining school. I think we will, you know, we'll solve our unknowns. We can increase the enrollment.
So,
But Dr. Martins, being that the SCG money, it comes in with each child. And so we're paying salaries and we're paying operational costs. So again, if these sites can, I mean, just put them on notice that we buy what we need, absolutely what we need, and just really kind of scrutinize exactly what we're going to cut. And so just be very cognizant of how expenditures are realized.
So right now, I'm working exclusively on the revenue side of the budget. Now, I
yeah.
give you a district overview that you have a feel for it. However, Renata, I believe all the principals and you liked and the cabinet liked very much. I did the same 10B5 for every single school site. So I have a district overview, and then I show every single school site that this is the revenue you generate. We are coming to that.
So if I can say with that is another element of this process that was never in place before. So each of our principals, we've met with each of them and had this preliminary discussion with them, and they were able to see what their school site generates, and how they need to relook at staffing potentially. And again, it's not just looking at staffing only, it's also looking at the entire budget of the district. Like, how can we bring in additional revenue? How can we bring in additional students? The unfortunate thing with our community is that the population of children has gone down. It's not just our school site that's been filling it, it's some of our charters as well. So we sometimes tend to share some of the students that go from one charter to the district back to a charter, but we don't have a large population of students, and the birth rates have gone down as well. And I think that was shared in the master plan a few years ago when it was brought to the board's attention. So it's that declining student population, but how can we look at it as a district and look at the overall budget?
And even Angel Fire,
Right.
you know, it's a, you know, my background is business and marketing. It's KNOW. I mean, you have it's the Enchanted Circle. We have the 3 communities. You know, Red River is in Taos County. A lot of people don't think it is or don't know it. Angel Fire, that Moreno Valley School was once revered. It's no longer at that level. So that's an opportunity. You know, that's a you know, let's just face what it is. You know, if that means and more students that come over here and we do it, and people do come here. There are commerce. We have a technology now with this COVID thing. People they can move to a Taos or an Angel Fire. So we just have to, once again, be reaching out, never take status quo. And that's what we've done for years, status quo. And it's great that Dr. Martins is here giving us that lens of like, okay, this is what's happening. Now we have a weather report that we didn't have. Really, this is what this is, which is fantastic.
So from the school size adjustment units, I would like to go further now. District size, we get some units, it's a little bit less because we are a small district, so below 4,000. Then rural population, it's a simple multiplier of census data times the school amount. So of course it goes down because overall less students. Similar at risk, the at risk index will be determined by PED. And then it gets multiplied by the student numbers. So I expect also, again, driven by student numbers going down. I don't know what the at-risk index for next year is. As you can see, it's $2 million. So that's a rather significant amount. So 8% roundabout of SLG, no? Because it's Yazzie Martinez relevant, of course. No? So Yazzie Martinez is at risk. That means social economic poor students. When it's Native American students, it's special ed students, and it's English language learner students. Growth units, of course, we have none. We are not a new district. The National Board Professional Teaching Standards, it's an interesting topic because we pay the full stipend of 1.5 units. Now that means the district eats up around about 30% of extra costs due to benefits. So it's great that we have National Board certified teachers. It's really great. As a finance director, of course, I have to say it's hurting us. So it's an interesting thing that the legislator says, okay, you need to pay these folks, but they forget to fund us for the benefits.
It's a mandate without being funded.
That's my claim.
I heard it. It's not unfunded mandates, it's underfunded mandates. Underfunded.
Yes.
I heard it in term.
So then here is something that was very interesting for me. Taos, Renata, I stay corrected. My understanding is Taos never reported charter schools student activities at the district to PED. So I made Renata and athletics and everybody aware, look, if charter school kids are participating in our activities, we need to report this, and voila, we get $10,000 more. Might not be big, but I believe if we are entitled to this money, do accurate reporting, we better report accurately. So this is, again, I know it's not much money. My main point is here is you are working with a team who is meticulously looking at data and scrutinizing it and setting a standard or improving our abilities to report accurately to secure the funding you would like to have in the budget.
You're reporting the facts, which is huge.
So, and then English language learners goes down quite a bit, actually. Again, a lot less students, and the 3-year average is also moving. It comes from PED. So we will see what comes out of that. We don't have national board certification of school nurses, as far as I know. One is coming, but okay, that's relevant for next fiscal year. So fiscal year 28, not 27. So now if we look at overall, the SEG is somewhat stable with a slight loss. So now, if you want to, the unit value was, the initial program unit value was given yesterday with 7,117. So to give you a perspective how the day, so that the colors won't match anymore, of course, because I will change right now live, a very important part. So that means we would get theoretically more money. That would be great if this all comes true. Again, this is a projection. I don't know when PED gives us the real 910B5, but this is the best projection I can provide. Now, on the expenditure side, you might know that the legislative roundhouse imposes on all school districts to pay at least 80% of the healthcare cost. Now in Taos, we have a free staggered tier system. Below 50,000, we pay 90% the employee 10. Between 50 and 60, it's 30-70, and then comes 40-60. So that means financially will be massively impacted. And for my calculations, I assume that basically this money, what you see right there, is basically eaten up by the healthcare cost. Because apart from the fact that Taos will pay a significant amount of higher participation, also the insurer already told us the prices go up 9.5%. So it's a
How much percent are they raising the insurance?
9.5.
9.5?
Yes.
Wow.
No, so basically, it looks, of course, much better. However, the money essentially gone through this legislative mandate, and we said, okay, we give you more money in the SEG if it's all plans out. That money is essentially gone just for healthcare cost.
I just have another quick question. I'm probably missing something huge, but if we're getting more money for special education, I don't understand how that will help the whole picture, because isn't that money that's given for special education supposed to be used in that area only?
So my understanding from the state statute is that the school board has local autonomy. So now, of course, PED will tell us, okay, we only approve your budget if your special education expenditures are aligned to your revenues and so on, but to be discussed, because SEG is, from my understanding, local autonomy. But yes, PED very clearly said, we will review your budgets if you connect your revenues to your expenditures through the program codes. So that means 2000 in this case. So to be discussed. So yeah, it is challenging because the special education funding and the general education funding is challenging simply by the fact that we are losing students. No, so yeah, I mean, so I love this discussion because yes, you have it. No, there's a distinction between how much can we expend on general education and how much can we expend on special education or on at-risk or on bilingual and ELL. Yes. So it's very challenging because the scrutiny, the School Budget Bureau announced to put on our budgets during this budget season will be increased, so taking away local autonomy.
Thank you.
The other increase was the, that 1%. And what was explained to me was that 1% is was factored into the SEG to, that's where I got the concept of, or the underfunded.
Mm-hmm.
And and I thought, how can the legislature be imposing these increases on us when the SEG is standard? But what was explained to me was that they factor in that 1% into the SEG.
So yes, theoretically we do it. No, so now you need to. So everybody needs to understand how this works. SEG is one number. So we increased the SEG
Yes.
based on the best projection. What would be a 1% cost? So and then we increased the SEG, but this pot now gets divided by the program units. They say, how many students did you have, and so on and so forth. So that means even if the total pot gets increased.
But my point is, does that offset the 80-20 that we're going to be?
So the 1% didn't configure in was the benefits cost.
Yeah.
So they'll do 1% direct, but then they
Yeah.
don't put in the benefits cost. So the benefit factor, which
Yeah.
could range from 0.3 to 0.45,
Yeah.
depending on who takes the.
Again,
yes.
that's the challenge when we
Yes.
see it actually in black and white.
Yeah, and healthcare is, of course, a very personal decision. So the planning for a healthcare budget is extremely complex because nobody knows what the personal situation of a singular married family situation
Yes,
is. So it's very, very difficult to make here a good projection.
We'll see it when it's all said and done.
Yes, and even if it's never really said and done because you have open enrollment periods, you have closed periods. Even if it's a closed period and the person has a change in life situations. So I give you a personal example. I'm not insured over the Tower School District because I'm insured for my wife. Now, if my wife would not have her job anymore when I have a change of life situation, open enrollment or not, I would need to, and I will be allowed to get on this healthcare plan. So, and I can't predict what's going on with the work of my wife. She neither, no? So we'll see. It's really, really challenging to build up a 100% solid healthcare budget. It's effectively, it's impossible. However, we do it as good as we can because we need to have a plan, of course. And then, as you said, per actual data, we need to adjust the plan.
And as part of that complex system, we're preparing a budget for the fiscal year 27, which is to be approved in June and of course applied in the next fiscal year. But when we're talking about open enrollment, that isn't until September of the following year. So we're doing our best to determine best budget based on factors that won't come in until September on this particular issue. We won't know until September, October, what decisions are made at that point.
So here we go into the discussion, an example, how much restricted expenditures do we need to budget? Is the board aware what I mean by restricted expenditures?
And then you have the, I don't know what you're factoring into your expenditure for maintenance and all these other costs. And your, I don't know if you call them indirect costs or, which is probably a 3.5 at least, or a higher, 5%. What are you increasing? More? Oh, my goodness.
Because look, please don't forget,
Usually
electricity.
It's like a 3.5, so I'm sure that it's more than that.
It's electricity is very expensive, gas is very expensive, and no, the utility cost
Utility costs.
is also very expensive. It's no, maintaining a building means also heating and cooling, means cleaning and so on, cleaning supplies. So yeah, it's definitely more than 5%. No, but main point here is again, we are planning, we are aware of the challenges, and we try to address it as good as we can, but everybody needs to be conscious. The healthcare cost is a big wild card, and we do the best we can to project, but we need to be very clear that we need to have, so restricted expenditure means in a nutshell, board, it's an expenditure line that says cash, because you cannot put in the budget cash. You need to have an expenditure object, and that is called restricted expenditures. That means you earmark this money to save, and you're not planning to spend it. So we'll say, if we have now hitting actual data and we see in healthcare we need to pay more, we don't need to reduce anybody's budget because we take from the restricted expenditures with earmarked money and fill in the hole. Now the big question is, of course, how much restricted expenditures do we want to budget? Because that cannot be spent, right? But this is what I, of course, recommend, and the superintendent knows it. We need restricted expenditures. So two major reasons, apart from the healthcare cost. Number one, every single federal program and capital outlay program needs cash because we need to spend the cash to make the request for reimbursement. If you don't have cash, you cannot spend the money. If you cannot spend the money, you can't get it back. So that's the reason why we need to have restricted expenditures for financing our special revenue funds. So that's reason number one. Reason number two.
So saying that, what you're saying is that like the federal money, Ms. Rodrigo, Ms. Renetta, is that we're funding like the federal grants.
Yes.
And then we get reimbursed.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that you have to have this cash set aside, and they're temporary loans
Yes.
that are to the federal funds, and then that are reimbursed once you get the reimbursement, and it goes back into the general fund.
So it's federal funds, but also capital outlay funds, no?
Excuse me?
Also capital outlay funds.
Yes,
No, so
all the special revenue
yes.
funds, which are.
yes. So
Secretary Trujillo, if I may, this is one of those conversations that we did have with the principals to help them with that understanding of, you know, everybody hears how large our cash balance is and that we have all of this money available. You know, why do we need to reduce down? I could keep what I want, but Dr. Martins was able to show them and explain to them this piece of the cash balance is really there to help us flow our federal funds until we get that reimbursement, and we have to have that money available to us. So it's not just money that's free that we can spend on whatever we choose to. So exactly what you said.
the second major reason is if PED decides that they can, and in June I fear that again, they pay the SEG maybe on the last day of a month, which legally is allowed. But that means we need to finance 3 or 4 payrolls. So now I told you already what one payroll is, $1 million. So just imagine we don't have the money to make a payroll because SEG comes late.
How often does the SEG come in?
Once a month.
Once a month?
No, but if once a month from the first day is different than once a month from the last day. So basically, again, dear board, I want to demonstrate how our team are literally thinking through these finances together. I bring the financial expertise in, other people bring HR, instructional expertise, leadership in, how we collaborate together to see, okay, how do we organize the financial situation of TAUS? How we are stable, and as shown that we are not a second Alamogordo. No, thank you. Nobody needs this, and we will not be there because you have a team which is working together and understands what's going on.
And I think they have to have the understanding that our payroll is a priority.
Yeah, of course.
Payroll is the priority. And, but there has to be money again for
Yeah.
for these other costs that maintaining the facilities.
What's the saying? You gotta pay to play.
Yes.
And, it's great you guys are
Dr. I just have one quick comment. I'm sorry, were you done?
No, it's just, it's great to see this. We were talking about this team effort in regards to collaboration. That's what we want here. The meeting of minds, you always get a better result. I think it's like a rope. You're a lot stronger together than you are separate silos. Compliment the superintendent, you, directors that working as a team. This is great.
I just wanted to make one comment, and this was before your time, so I'm just giving you a heads up for this time. Generally, my experience when it comes to budget time is that the board's generally given a whole bunch to understand in like less than a day, or like right in the meeting, and we're supposed to figure it out, like how we feel about it, or if we have any input or any suggestions. This year, particularly given the problems that we're facing, it would be great. I would really appreciate it. And if the rest of the board doesn't have time, I'll make time to try and get a thorough understanding of it before we vote on it. It would be really important this time, I think.
Of course, I understand that, and any board member is more than welcome to visit me in my office, and we can go
Okay.
in detail through this. But I believe just to understand the revenue side of the budget helps all of you to understand specifically, okay, big picture overview, what is going on. Now, I don't want to go into every single school site, but I would like to show you one school site that you know, okay, what is our team doing? And we are
Okay.
talking to principals as one example. Is that okay?
Thank you.
What
Dr.
school?
Martins? I just have a quick comment. I think that it's important that we approach the budget in the manner that we've done this morning, to where the entire board hears what's going on and can ask questions. I would encourage board members, if you so choose, to reach out to Dr. Martins, but in the future, I think it'd be important that as we plan for the budget, that we schedule another one of these meetings so that you can update us again where we're at. And I
Great.
just wanted to comment and thank you and thank administration and the team that is strategically planning and forecasting, and we appreciate the data. It's, having a good team in place is key to success, and to hear you speak about that and all the work that's gone into your presentation today and the work over the course of the last couple of weeks and months is really setting our district up to navigate through these challenges.
Okay, so
I
now
agree with your comment, Mark.
I could go to Arroyos if you want to, or any other school site.
Yes, you.
Yeah, you're gonna go with one, right? You're gonna
Yeah,
choose-
only one,
Okay, yeah.
but I go to that one. Yes, let's go there. So I don't want to go in detail over the SEG because we did that, no, but it's the same data, but of course reduced to the school side, because I wanted every principal to understand you are running a business, your customers are your students, and your product is education. And the more customers you have, aka students, the more revenue you make, and the more education you shall create. Now that's the whole idea of a school, right? Create education. So per the SEG funding formula, we go into this. And then we show them how much do you have your general ed, special ed, so everything what we discussed. And then on the bottom, we get a number for the 910B5. And I'm sorry, sometimes this Excel is a little bit clunky because it's that big. And Maria promised me I get a little bit better processor. And okay, the raw revenue is 1.5 million. Might be now a little bit higher because the unit value goes up. So I call it raw revenue. Why? The school sites produce, of course, the SEG, right? But the school sites need to, I call it a tax, to central administration, because the superintendent's office and the federal program folks and all of these folks in central need to be paid. HR, IT, finance need to be paid. Operation and maintenance of plant needs to be paid. And as we have seen, all of these departments have no SEG units attached, right? But we need to be paid. So now, for a district of our size, House Bill 2 in regular session 2020 had the expectation that 65% of the SEG revenue will be spent in the instruction inside the classroom. I will go into that a little bit later. That's function 1000, 2100, 2200. I will explain that a lot more in detail, what all of this means, okay? So now I put on a tax, not of 35%, but 22.5%. So I already want to demonstrate to everybody administration needs to be squeezed, because we don't want to invest into administration. We want to invest into the schools, right? So I already am squeezing on the administrative part. So, but that still means the school in this constellation should be running with basically 1.2, maybe 1.25 with a new unit value. This is your budget. So now it's on the principal to decide, okay, how do you want to spend that budget? How much is a principal salaries? Does it has to be a 1.0? Does it need to be a 0.5? What is it? How many teachers do you need? Okay, now you need to, you want to have a custodian, you need to have, and so on. But like that, the principal knows, okay, I have this amount of money available, and now it's on the principal and the programmatic folks to tell finance, how do you want to spend this money? And this is how we approach now, principal by principal, this expenditure side of the budget. So you know what your revenue is, you know what you have available, and you know what you need to pay, that basically the whole district can function. It's the same like you are just a cost factor, right? So from a student point of view, you are overhead. The whole school board, no us, we are all overhead. We don't produce education. We are, from a finance point of view, the necessary evil, because these expenditures must be done, because without a school board, it wouldn't work, right? Similar for without HR, it wouldn't work, and so on and so forth. No, but I want you to know that our team already decided, okay, first of all, we squeeze administration. That's the first point. But everybody might have to ship in something. No, but like this, we now know the revenue, and we know how much money do you have to run your educational program, because that helps, of course, establishing the expenditure side. Let's go on the expenditure side.
Excuse me, what was the 343,000? What was that taken? What's the second one?
This is the overhead. That's you.
Overhead. Okay,
No,
thank you.
that's the school board, that's the superintendent, that's myself,
Yeah.
all the overhead.
Got it. Thank you.
Or the cost of doing business, that's what we learn in business.
Yeah.
Is that another phrase?
You can say it like that, yes.
Arroyos del Norte here, and that's what their SEG contributes to the overhead.
Yes, but as said, I need to update the data. So this was last week's data. Yesterday evening, afternoon, I got the email from PED with a new unit value. When we were in the meetings, I said, look, this is the best guess what I have right now. Once we know the initial program unit value, but you can see how I designed the SEG, no? I just need to update this one data point. Everything else is formula driven.
Dr. Martins, I remember, Concha, this is when we were at the general session and we had this one young man. They announced formally PED the unit value, but this is the one young man that was a student, but I love the way he said it. He goes, I thought I was going to announce the unit value for the whole state. But going back to this, it's what was announced at the spring budget and formally sent yesterday evening by the state.
So I only trust the written word on program unit values. So let's go to the expenditure side. What I did is I look at the current expenditures and then I basically extrapolated. So what did I do? I said, okay, whatever is salary related, put a 0.15 or 1.5% on Y. My impression was it was a general 1% increase. This is actually not true. If you read the Senate Bill 151, it's different. It's not a general 1% increase, it's different. So providing the district a lot more flexibility. The 0.05, I thought that's a good indicator because everybody makes a step. So to extrapolate this data, again, it's the best guess right now. In healthcare benefits, I multiplied the current healthcare benefits with 1.3. I believe that's rather conservative. And the reason is this big unknown of do people enroll with us or not? This is just a big thing. So just that you know, this is in Excel. Last week, I created a so-called provisional database of vision. So that means imagine a copy and paste of the actual data, what we have. Now I have a test database, so to speak, and my benefit experts already configured the benefits due to the new roles in this provisional database. After the principals tell me, and Renata, how many, or what the people situation is, the employee situation is, I will be able to run a mock but real payroll of fiscal year 27 in the system, giving me the intelligence, so to speak, to build up the most solid budget on salaries. Renata told me that this approach is rather novel. So basically, here I shoot a little bit into the dark, but if I can run a real payroll, then I get, of course, much better data. No? So that means we need to sit down, update all the salary schedules and all of this, and then I can do this.
And
For
Dr.
all intent
Martins,
for all intent purposes, it's playing, we're able to play with the numbers without touching the actual numbers. So that gives us case scenarios that we can provide budget-wise by using real data, but not the actual data.
and to add to that, something that we've also found, which again, going back to accurate reporting, is when we've gone through everybody's employee role, we found duplicates or wrong coding. So we're cleaning up the system on that end too. So it's a multi-layer process that we're going through, but it is going to help us have a better, clearer picture of what the budget's going to look like at each of the school sites and for the district.
So
You know what would be, and I think it's going to lend itself for the future is that that there's a column to compare where, like last year's actuals. And, you know, not, okay, eventually, then, I'll say. No, because again, we're having to see what it is that, what the challenges are, not just for you all, but for us in approving this, in looking at these budgets, because again, you know, the cabinet is working on the reality of it all. But we have to have a full understanding because again, there are cuts that are going to have to be made. And it isn't just maybe, it's going to be a very critical time, that the only way we can see it is if we show not just ourselves, but even for documentation purposes, the actual where we've been. I used to carry a 34-year actual to be able to project, and then I would do a future to see where we're going to be in the future. So again, you have to just look at the past, but look at the future. What is it going to change? Is the economy going to change? Is there too many factors?
And Secretary
We
Trujillo,
don't live in the present.
what we're trying to do here is look at how we can avoid those cuts. And this is the potentials that there are. I mean, we have to face the reality, there may be, but this is the type of budget analysis we're trying to create so that we can avoid those avoid cuts that are necessary, right? And so what I do want to bring to the table is we are looking at program softwares that actually do projection to 3 to 5 or 6 years,
Yes.
projection analysis of
Yes.
budgets, not
Yes.
just this year, but in fiscal year 2030.
Normally they ask for a 5-year projection.
But we're not there yet. We're almost there. We're going to get there.
I know, but I'm just saying,
So-
that's the norm.
So
But again, you also look at where you've been in the past.
Yeah.
And
So-
it actually anymore, it's irrelevant because again, things have changed. We live in a world that right now that is just changing and the economy is just dire
So
for everyone.
What I do is once the 40FD is in, then I go into this tool and I put the 40FD data in the columns of 80th and 120th, because that's then the best data for the next fiscal year, right? And then on the 40FD, I already know, okay, how will the next year's budget looking? So I'm really in front of the curve, therefore, no? And if I would see there's a major shift, you will see that the cabinet will discuss with me, okay, look, everybody now understands the SAG. I see already 9 months down the road, we will have these complications. But that's basically how we can avoid postponing issues which we could detect earlier. So I think we have a good radar to detecting issues in time. And then this data gets updated with the 80FD, so AKA you kick out the 40FD data and you put 80F and 80F on 80F and 120FD. And once you have the 120FD, then you have what we have right now. So during the school year, depending on the data we have, we can already project 1 year later and have this, you would call early detection system. So we do that already.
And I had another thought. I'm not going to ask you to go back to a 3 or 4 years because it was all wrong anyway.
No, I know. That's,
Again, from this point forward,
yeah.
I would say from this point forward, because again, it would be a maze of,
That's his,
Look,
that's his initial reaction when we.
So,
talked about it,
no.
yeah.
So,
I erased that.
Secretary
Okay, second.
Trujillo, for an example, also, Renata is, let's say, I call it sandbox place, like, okay, what would happen if we go to a 4D school? So why is this discussion even there? Española, Poyaque, and others in the northern New Mexico area go to a 4D. What would be the impact? What does it mean on SAG? We can play this all out. So we have the group, our team is able to play this out, which I would like to believe not every team can do this.
Dr. Martins, would it be advisable that you do look at last year's and compare with this year moving forward to see in all actuality how skewed and incorrect things were and the improvements you've made to identify that?
I'm sorry, President Flores. I only look into the future. The past is the past. And what would it be benefit? Is it what bad, good, worse, whatever it may be? I believe we know through the forensic what it was. So I don't want to invest my scarce time into something what I believe is not for the future relevant. I'm here to provide present and future guidance that our kids here, our students, get the best possible educational experience. I'm not here to make a profit, because a school district should not make a profit. Our profit is education. That's the key element. This is also from PED. I had discussion with the superintendent who told me, hey, look, Martins, what do you think about my budget? And I discussed it with him and I said, look, superintendent, it's great that you are saving here, but you are saving in function 1000 and you think that's good. I think that's bad. And he asked me, why do you say that? You're a finance guy. Look, in 1000 you produce education. So I salute you for saving money in administration, and I would like to encourage you to spend more in 1000 because you're not there to increase cash. I understand, and you understand we need cash and we need to figure out how much and all of that. No, okay. But the main mission is produce education. So please spend in 1000, 2100, 2200. We are not here to make a profit. This is a very big shift for anybody in private business would say, what? You are there to spend money? Yes. We are here to spend money to produce education. That's the mission, not to make a profit. No, we need to be very conscious about this.
President Flores, members of the board, if I may, I wanted to see if Dr. Martins could move to his next section, because I think what you'll be able to see using the Sankey graph that he would show was how the money flows. And it's a visual of current, or as much updated as possible.
So full link, these function might not talk to you right now. So if you see function 1000 to 5000, what is this? So I would like to explain that in a way more graphical manner. And then this data will talk to you better. Additionally, what I did for the principals, I plotted to them the current data. This is what Ms. Mondragon indicated. Is the current data actually correct? So we went through this, how many FTE are in what job class code. And then the important ones, of course, teacher. And then also basically, let's not go there. Here, I just simply showed the state statute. So the legislative roundhouse says, this is what we give you money for. I don't say we expect anything. We just say, this is the students, averages and so on, what the Roundhouse is giving us money for in the SEG. That's their idea. I don't see that's good, nor if you see 30 students per classroom in a English high school, that's certainly not an ideal number, but we need to understand on these numbers, the Roundhouse is operating on these numbers. And I show you just that this team, again, we are looking at state statute, we are looking at in-depth and funding formula and some guardrails, so to speak, to understand what is the Roundhouse actually funding? What can we do here, no? So now to be able to read finance data, let me show you the following. Try to make that a little bit bigger. Does this work? Can you read this? Okay. So now following. A Sankey diagram is a flowchart diagram. If you please, everybody look at the flowchart, if you may. Just imagine you have water coming out of a spring. And the water is now flowing through the acequia from left to right, through channels, and it's getting diverted and so on. Yeah, so maybe similar to us, no? But now, instead of water, replace water now with money, with cash. Cash is flowing from the left to the right. So on the left, we see budget sources. So that means who provides us money? As you can see, we have a good cash position. You see that top left, cash.
Where's that cash coming from? Where's the cash? What's the source?
That's with Centennial and with the state treasurer, no?
Just what?
That's with Centennial and with the state treasurer. Bank.
Okay.
No? So that's the cash. And here you can see why I said we need to distinguish between cash. You have unrestricted cash, restricted cash, capital outlay fund cash, and debt cash. So that means the big cash number is, as you can see, not unrestricted. The big cash is in capital outlay and in debt. So
I see.
no, so now the next one is we receive some local revenue for mill levy rate and other local revenue. Then the big block is, of course, state SEG. That's the primarily revenue source. Then we have some additional state funds. We get some federal funds and some other little revenue things. So the source, the budget source, is cash plus the revenue. You add these two numbers, and this is what we need to budget on the expenditure side. So now we go to the next column, fund. I like to call a fund a checking account. These are essentially the big checking accounts we have from an accounting point of view. Unrestricted money, that means you, the school board, you are, so to speak, in the driver's seat. Restricted money, you are not so much anymore in the driver's seat because the program manager, typically the federal program manager, state program manager, is telling you how to spend the money on their programmatic needs. That's the reason why this is called restricted. When we receive capital outlay money, you are even less in the driver's seat in the sense of it's not for education, you must use this money for capital outlay. And debt, of course, this is what I explained last time. If a taxpayer gives us money for debt, we cannot spend it on anything else but debt, and that's the reason why we want to create a checking account. You will have that on the next school board agenda now as a resolution, that everybody knows, no, we have this money, yes, but you cannot spend it on anything else but paying back debt. So fund, I would like you to remember as it's like a checking account. So now we know from where do we get the money. Either we have it already or we will receive it for the projected revenue. And where do we have it now stored in a checking account? The function is basically where do we spend the money? I like to explain it like this. Student-centered. That means, number one, you are inside literally in a classroom. You see educational folks, aka teachers and EAs typically, interacting in a classroom or athletics, no, the classroom for athletics is the sport fields, interacting with kids. That's function 1000, student-centered. Function 2100. Now we are outside of the classroom. We are going, in example, to a special education setting, to a social worker, So an adult is interacting with a subset of students in a let's say, a more office type environment. This is student support services. That's function 2100. It's still student centered. So the green column under the function. The third student centered function is 2200. That means support services instruction. That means no kids are anymore in the room. There are now adults in the room who receive typically professional development of educational folks. So if teachers or EAs and other folks interacting with students receive professional development, this is 2200. Now the legislative says, if you spend money in instruction, so 1000 in the classroom, or interacting with student, 2100, or on professional development of people interacting with students, this is inside the classroom because, of course, the assumption is we produce a better education. So I call this is the good dollar. So now we come to administration. That's all of you and myself. That's not so good dollar because it's either 2300, that's the superintendent's office, or 2400, that's the principal office, or 2500, that is HR, finance, and IT. As you said it, that's the money needed to do business. Additionally, we have all other functions in the sense of transportation, maintenance and operations of plant, food services, and community services. So the function tells you where we spend the money. Capital outlay is function 4000, of course, capital outlay expenditures, and function 5000 is debt service. But I hope now when I say function 1000, 2100, 2200, I would like you to have that picture in your head. 1000, it's a classroom. 2100, it's a business, it's an office where an adult is interacting with students. And 2200, that means we professionally develop instructional and so employees interacting with students. Because if it would be professional development of you or of me, that still would be function 2500. It's an HR function to develop professional people who are not instructing kids. So I hope that this explanation of the function numbers, you have now a picture, I hope, in your head. 2300, your picture is essentially Renetta's and Superintendent's latest office. 2400, you think a principal office. 2500, you think IT, HR, finance. 2600, you think maintenance, custodians, maintenance, Alipio, security, all of these. 2700 means from and to school transportation. I hope like this function, where do we spend our money? Now this accounting string speaks more to you. So after for the next packet, once you break that down for us, and just give us almost like a table of contents. I can provide you an Excel with all the data for fund, function, object, and so on. The main thing here is literally I want you to be able to read this data how I read it. So I don't want you to see a number 1000 and what is this? When you see 1000, I want you to see a classroom. If you see 2500, I want you to see 3 people. Ms. Shintak, Dr. Royal, and myself, and of course, Nicole. So I want that this data is speaking to you and not just a number. It's not a number. Well, like you said, it's a word. Yes. So you could just give us that. Yeah, I will. That'd be great. Absolutely. We can follow you a lot better. So now you know from who gave us the money, or do we have the money, or who gave us the money, and which checking account is this, and where do we spend the money? Now, if President Flores says, okay, Martins, you say you spent money in the classroom, the logical question is, but on what? And the what is the object. So it's either personnel cost or technical professional services, property services, other purchase services, supplies and materials, and so on. So the object is on what do you spend your money? And if I say, President Flores, you spend money on people, your logical question is, okay, who do you pay? And that's the job class code. Here you can see we pay teachers, we pay instructional assistants, instructional support, administrative folks, facilities folks, and everybody else summarized. So this is basically, I call it the where, the what, and the who. Where is function? Where in the school site physically do you spend money? On what do you spend money? Do you spend money on salaries or on staff? And if it's salaries, who do you pay? So I hope like this, these 4 things, fund, function, object, and job class code is now speaking to you, and it's not just a number. Any questions up to now regarding these terminologies right now? I hope this helps your understanding. So now we talked about program codes and Yazzie Martinez. So let's look at this a little bit in depth. Here, we look now in program codes. And by the way, I'm showing you no, I didn't show you. Let's go to the district and let's do it specifically for Taos. So I can call this data, no, and I showed you that with Alamogordo. That's the reason why you could compare this data, no? Data. And let's go on program. So now we have real Taos data. Before we had statewide data. So here we can see for all the, let's say, Yazzie Martinez relevant student groups, and that would be per the UCOA. So and here I want you to make something aware which will be very challenging because it's impossible. PED in the UCOA allows us to budget for at-risk students, for bilingual students, and for special education students. As you can see, we do not have a program code for Native American students. So we will never be able to do anything or prove anything. How much money do you spend on Native Americans, because the accounting system doesn't allow me to show this data. So I would need to cross-reference how many Native American students are in every single school site and so on and so forth. So with a tremendous amount of legwork, you might be able to fizzle it out, but the program code simply doesn't exist. We can address at-risk, bilingual, and SPED. And we will be able to address ELL because PED just created the program code 4060 that was announced. I need to look it up if they really publish that stuff now. And then we can code also ELL students. But the program code, basically what I want you to picture in the program code is which student group do we target? There's 1010, that's general education. 1020 is elementary fine arts. 2000 is special education. 3000 is vocational. So, by the way, if we are talking about CTE, do you see that the funding formula does not fund not one CTE student? So we have a student group, CTEs, and I believe we might agree that CTE is a very good program. Rio Rancho is building up a complete CTE school on 528. So I would even call it a magnet CTE school, what Rio Rancho is doing. But there are no program units attached to it in the SEG formula, and there's not even, so we have the on the expenditure side, the program code, no, vocational training, but we don't have a revenue for this. So interesting enough, so just a segue, no? And then we have the 4000 program codes, 4010, that is bilingual, 4020 is at risk, 4050 is gifted, and 4060 will be ELL. So the program code, I want you to know, now we are talking about for which student group per accounting speak we are spending the money on. And when you have the accounting string put together, you know now the fund, your checking account, function, where do you spend your money, object, on what do you spend your money, program, which student group do you pay something for, and then the job class code is for who. So normally it's the what and the who would be better, but technically it's coded like first for what, then which student group, and then comes for who. And in the middle of that, we have the location side.
Question is, for example, would Cyber Magnet be under at-risk, or would they be classified with the regular high school?
And then I look at program and
There you
tell
go.
me, and
Chris,
what
same thing.
what student group are you addressing here? No, so this is something what I, as a finance director, I might have an opinion because I'm also an educator, but my opinion doesn't matter. The line officer need to tell me that, and if I really disagree with that, they will hear it from me in private.
And she'll win anyway.
Right. It's dependent on the student, and we look at all of their qualifications of and identifiers of who they are.
Okay.
So the cyber has a variety of students that are in there, but looking at overall our district, almost all of our students qualify for economically disadvantaged
Yeah,
in the
definitely.
categories.
Okay, one other question. I don't know how hard this will be, and you don't have to tell me, but I'm have an idea that it might not be impossible to actually identify the Native American students and be able to do an
And-
assessment there
No,
too.
If I can address that piece.
Okay,
We do need to do that through our programming side, and
Yeah.
that is something that Ms. Ray Lujan helps my department do. We are going into tribal consultation in the upcoming weeks, and that is something that's important for our tribal
Mhm.
government to have that information.
definitely.
So we do suss that out for the district and are able to report what we're spending for our
Okay.
students.
So-
Thanks, I appreciate it, both of you.
So
Thank you.
following,
And actually, at the Pueblo, at the board meeting that we had at the Pueblo, that information was presented
Correct.
and file
Right.
information. So I remember that.
but I want to make the board aware of the following. This is all by hand strict data. Why? As you have seen, our core cannot have a Native American program code as much as we wish for because the uniform chart of account doesn't provide it. So that means you would need to go to the state legislative and say, okay, guys, if you are serious about Yazzie Martinez and Native American students, nobody can see if the SEG money is accordingly related to this. Another challenge is, of course, have you seen in the SEG funding formula any Native American units? Because I have not. So they say we have two problems. On the revenue side, we have a problem, and on the expenditure side, we have a transparency problem. I cannot provide you with transparency, Vice President Spray, what you would like to have. Impossible for me. Literally, I can't do it. And you have a revenue problem. So these two problems, I call them rather wicked because I'm just mildly optimistic that our legislative will be able to address that.
Thank you for even letting us know that we should. Appreciate it. We can now go do that.
You might remember that I also requested your support for the at-risk funding, specifically Yazzie Martinez.
Mhm.
And I told you that I see certain rather big weaknesses in the current state statute. So you need to know the following. Around about, I would say 90% of my suggestions, which I presented to Gary Frostrat once over 2 years ago, are implemented in state statute. So the at-risk stuff, what's now in state statute, that's was based on all of my suggestions. But some parts were not done as suggested by me, and I would really appreciate the opportunity to help you understand why I say that's not ideal what's right now there. But that's a whole different topic.
Yep, but
We-
thank you so much.
We may be getting the new governor, maybe that will be addressed.
So. Now we went over the SEG in detail and how we plan to calculate the expenditure side with the challenges specifically, of course, of salary schedules as indicated. That's for me a real pain point as work calendars too. We went over the budget analysis tool from OBMS. So I showed you live data that's essentially available to any OBMS user. And in summary, I presented to you needed improvements for a sound budget. I explained to you how the SEG is calculated and how calculated per school side to create these sound budgets. I explained to you the Sankey diagrams in the hope that if I show you my financial data, I know I have to present it in this number format, but now that these numbers are connected in your brain with the where, the what, and the who, and which student group that this data is speaking to you like it's yelling at me, then how our team here is developing a plan to stay financially solid for years to come because we can. Again, I want to emphasize my thing of challenging time doesn't mean crisis. Challenging time means we plan and we are together, stronger together, we can make it, absolutely. But we just cannot say we do it like always. And I think now everybody understands now fully what I mean by that. Challenging is not a crisis. Challenging is problem solving and working together. So that means this team is defining the challenges to provide the board, you, with the information needed to make a sound and responsible fiduciary decision for the fiscal year 27 budget. And I stay for further questions.
Thank you, Dr. Martins, for the presentation. I think you hit a keynote there. You know, when you face challenging times, it's a very critical moment where we need to come together and work together and collaborate to plan and prepare for the future. So I appreciate the collaboration between yourself and administration and, you know, hearing you speak and knowing that we have very experienced, knowledgeable, passionate individuals within our administration makes me proud to be part of your guys' team. You know, I don't look at it as you're part of my team. I'm with you guys and when we're a team together. So thank you for that. Does the board have any questions or comments for Dr. Martins, Superintendent Leyen, or Associate Superintendent Mondragon?
I just have a comment, and that is, again, it was noted that it would, that the national conference is coming up now in April. And we had considered maybe attending the conference, but again, it's a huge expense. And I think to myself, for the appearance, for any appearance, you know, when you don't know what your budget status is going to be and the cash that's necessary for what it takes, I think that I would rescind my willingness to attend, because I had planned on attending, and a couple of the other three of us were going to, and to me, I'm thinking, you know what, it starts from the top, you know, and just saying, you know what, I cannot, for the sake of transparency, make an expenditure that is going to affect anything in the expenditures of Taos Municipal Schools.
So I want to thank you for this. And on a personal note, when I started here, Superintendent Layton said, okay, Martins, you have some open positions, you need to fill them. And I looked at data and said, okay, look, 2 positions, I will not fill them. Yes, I know we need them, yes, but I can't afford them. So fact is, in fiscal year 25, with function 2,500, so we say IT, HR, finance, spent around about 1.9 million. In fiscal year 26. We spent less than 1.6. So we'll say I was saving in my area and with my colleagues around about $300,000, which is more or less 13% roundabout. Everybody else wouldn't even need to save 13%. So we'll say what you are saying, I really appreciate it, because I have lived this already this fiscal year.
President Flores, Vice President Spray, members of the board, just a recommendation. At least I know that maybe there was a plan for 3 to go, but I do recommend that we have at least 1 go, because going back to Member King's last year, we were able to provide some information, but it's also part of the cost of doing business that if there is something that information that we learned from the national conference that we can bring back to help us as a district move ways of the budget or the finance or the human resource or enrollment or whatever the case may be. And it's, again, recommendation, just at least maybe at minimum, we have 1 that could potentially go based on schedules. So whatever information is learned there can be brought back, and that would help us as a team make decisions that we could bring back to the board. But that's, again, up to you all.
Yeah,
If I could echo that sentiment from Secretary Trujillo, which is why I have brought up also the type of trip reports, because it holds to accountability. There was 12 to 13 staff that attended the ASBO conference. Was that financially efficient? And was that, because I just want to make sure that every person that attended the conference is also not only retaining the information, but bringing it back. How is it being implemented? And it's not to say that maybe they were not there for the right reasons. I just want to know, again, like you said, even if 1 person attended, could 1 person from the department have attended and brought that information back, or was it absolutely necessary for that many people to attend?
So remember, yes, one of the things that we had last year was asking quite the opposite. So we could have more people. In fact, that was brought by the board, and we could have more people attend. So we could bring back that information. So remember that what expenditures we do this year is based on the budget that was approved for this year. So again, it's, we can narrow it for next year, but last year, the board itself had requested to see if we could have more goals so that we could provide more professional development, more information to be brought back, and we budgeted for that. So next year, we can budget for less and then provide some, kind of what they call teacher of the trainer of trainers, where you bring one and then bring back. But for that same sentiment, that's why I would recommend, because we did budget for travel for the board, and I'd recommend that we have at least one go so we can bring back that one information.
Yeah, again, I would just continue to push for those trip reports, because how are we sharing this information? And collectively, when we would do trip reports within the tribe, our leadership had access to that to see kind of what each person attended, what their, because it's like divide and conquer. There's so many sessions there that you want to attend but can't. So if I knew that like Dr. Layton was in a session that I didn't attend and he had a trip report on it, I can go and pull that information and get the knowledge myself without actually having attended. And so that's just my reason for, really, because clarifying why so many people attended. It's not a matter of, it's just how are we bringing that information and sharing it?
Board Member Concha, if I may, that was something that we did look at as a leadership team, was who absolutely needed to go. And unfortunately, they sent out the agenda a little bit later than we had anticipated, but we were looking at the agenda to see when things were scheduled and who absolutely needed to be there. So we were able to take off some members of our team so that they weren't having to attend, and we could attend some of those sessions.
Additionally, Board Member Concha, I believe in your spirit, and my folks said, okay, we have also NASPO spring and winter conferences. Nicole, I think you attended that, right? So emphasis on just Nicole, and then she brought back the knowledge. So here in finance, we already implemented what you suggested. So we are very much on the same thought path.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, just to speak on the national, I totally concur with Superintendent. We, it's once a year, just like, most of us have kids. They're only going to be 10 once. So I believe at least one board member should go. I know I talked to Dr. Space, and he went, and then he went back and presented. He's a former superintendent. Dr. Martin's to help you. So yeah, I think we have a budget. Our board has a budget. I think like 50,000. I think one of us should go just for professional development. It's I know the other districts in like Pewaukee, 4 of those guys go. Chama goes. They have multiple board members, and Chama, let's face it, that's a tiny district. So I just think that obviously, there's commitments here in town. We've got people raising kids. You've got a business. President Mark has a full-time job. Maybe it's board member Concha that goes. And she could.
Full-time job too.
Well,
Just start.
yeah, she just, but I know I did get the email from Samantha. I was kind of, I want to pass the opportunity, but let's not miss that. Let's see what happens next year. Because I talked to a board member in Roswell, and he said he went to, maybe a couple of years ago, he went to Philadelphia, and I was like, wow.
See, I'm talking, you can say $50,000 in budget. Budget is budget, but cash is cash. And cash is going to be paid for the, and that, to me, that is,
Board member
that's
Trio,
important to me.
if it's not you, it needs to be someone from the board.
No.
We have all philosophies on your finance. We all are human beings, we're adults. We're here for betterment of the district. As we're here, all of us are here for student outcomes. So this all comes back to that. Student outcomes, our strategic plan. When we go to these conferences, you learn from different information from different board members or what's presented. That's just the way it is. It's going to class. We're all sitting in the same classroom. We're getting a different message. So it's
a deadline of like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah.
For the sake of continuity, I would recommend board member King go since he went last year.
I appreciate it. I wish I could go this year. I've got so much on my plate. I got the email, and I'm like, the text, and I'm going, I just don't have the time. I would love to go. Trust me. I can't make this
Any further questions to me?
But doesn't the, doesn't the PD bring back that information to us? In,
No.
in, and then, and they don't, they're, you're,
There's a summary, what you're saying, Board Member Trio. I mean, what we could do, Marvin is our president and Joe's obviously, that's our executive director. You can see if there's any, like, he does highlights with our conference and maybe there's a way, you know, and if someone, you know, like, when is it, like the 2nd, 15th, 11th through the
10th through the 13th.
yeah, so, I mean, if there's any, and it's, you know, we were way ahead of the game, because I think in February, so we had the tickets, yeah, I mean, let's kind of keep this in line, but just next year, I mean, obviously, if it's not gonna happen this year, let's do some summary, we can go down and have coffee with Joe, and he can give us highlights, but let's definitely make a point, at least 2 members, because you know, like I said, Chama, I don't know, but in regards to Powake, which is an equal, they're in our district, they have 4 members, and they were, you know, it's great to see people you know, and you can talk and.
I understand it all. I understand how important it is. But again, just not knowing, there's a lot of unknowns in our district, and I think maybe not for this year, maybe next year again. Let's see how our financial situation is because we're dealing with what's in the ground now. You know, and again, what's coming down the pike, that's understandable, but again, we're dealing with the nuts and bolts of our district. And that's, to me, that's very important.
2 points. Typically those conferences are recorded and you can go online later and watch the whole thing. But secondly, our attorney Elena Gallegos told me Walsh Gallegos is presenting this one this time. And she had invited all of us along, like months ago. She said, you guys all need.
No, I
you
saw
guys
it.
all
It
should
was-
go.
I saw that they're hosting.
Yeah. Anyway,
No,
that's it.
And back to Dr. Martin's fantastic program, your presentation. I think we're a lot more informed. I would say, like President Mark alluded to, let's keep this conversation going.
Yeah.
So then we can be more effective in our board management and finance, because this is our bread and butter. You know, one of the things we learned in the conference, you control the budget, and I compliment the leadership of the district. I will sleep good tonight, knowing that you guys are all talking. No, you know what? I am not afraid of life. You hit it right on the nose, Dr. Martin. You deal with it. You get a strategy. You know, we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but we can face it. So I think it's well put, and I'm encouraged with your leadership and the team spirit.
Thank you, Dr. Warrens. We look forward to the next presentation. Thank you, Dr. Royal and Associate Superintendent Mondragon. Thank you for joining us today. And Mrs. Nicole over there, thank you for joining us today and for all your work. Ms. Gonzalez and Superintendent, thank you. Thank you all. And Mrs. Gentet, we appreciate all you. Item 7 is upcoming Taos Municipal School Board meetings. Our regular school board meeting is scheduled for April 8th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Any future topics?
Yes, President Mark, if I could still get it on the agenda for the 8th, I don't know, but I'd like to do an update on the Taos Municipal Schools Historic Art Collection at the next possible opportunity. Thank you.
Any other board members with future topics? Hearing none, item 9 is adjournment.
President Mark, again, are we going to, when is the budget due? When is the budget due, Mr. Martins?
I got an email that the budget is due on 15th of April, and I reached out to the School Budget Bureau and said that will be rather challenging if I don't have my SEG 910B5, because if I don't know how much money we get, it's a little bit challenging to provide you a budget. I need the final number, of course, no? So what I
You say the
did,
15th of April,
yes,
Stu?
So when is that needs to be put on the agenda for approval? No.
we need to have sessions with the public and so on. So honestly, I told them already, I don't see us capable of.
Are we going to have another presentation of the final budget?
We can get an extension, right? Is that-
No.
No, that's the budget due date, but I told them already that I don't see myself capable to provide them with a budget on that due date.
Yeah, so they just deal with it. I mean, I know,
Yeah, I mean,
no, I know, I have reports.
as long
that
as,
say, you get an extension, you can get an extension. I mean, if they're not giving you that factor,
it's a challenging time in all aspects, so not only financially, also logistically and all of that. You asked me, that's my official answer. That's what PED told me, and I told you what I already told them, that I don't think so, but that we will be able to present that on for 15th to the School Budget Bureau. Now you need to know the following. We need to distinguish what budget is due. So remember the fund situation. The budget for 11,000 is due on for 15th. So the faster we get that thing fixed, the better. But then we still need to talk about budgets for Title I and all the other 30 programs and capital outlay. But these are different checking accounts. It's a different methodology also sometimes, no? So what we discussed today was SEG, only 11,000. And then don't forget, I mean, Annette and I will deal with Impact 8 15,100. Nicole and I will deal primarily with 15,200. Then 21,100. That is Marcos with food and. So it doesn't stop. Now, all these special revenue funds are later due. So it's basically a staggered budget row, so to speak, no? And the more special revenue funds we get budgeted through the operational OPBUDS time, aka up to, let's say, 20th of June, in better shape we are, because if not, these special revenue funds have on day one no budget, and we need to create a so-called initial budget, initial bar, to get a budget authority from PED for whatever was not budgeted from OPBUDS seasons. So we'll say, even if we don't get a budget approved during OPBUDS, then we have to work in July, first week, second week, to get that flying as quickly as we can. But today the focus was, so that was my understanding, President Flores, that you want to talk specifically SEG because that is the fund. All the rest needs to be budgeted and approved by you too. So it's a staggered approach. And I interpreted your question to when is the 11,000 budget due?
So President Flores, Vice President, members of the board, it's a very good question. Excuse me. And so PED, when they announced at the spring budget and they staggered calendars, because every district depends on what calendar they give, they knew that they were going to be providing early calendars with some of the funding at the last moment. So they know that they're going to work with the districts with the kind of funding. But in this type of approach that we're trying to take, it's so that we don't do what we may have done prior, which is land a big Bible in front of you with a bunch of numbers for you just to review in one evening. So our approach is going to be to where we stagger it so that every part of the program is understood before the final budget at the end of June gets to be submitted and
See, that's
approved.
what I'm saying. This is the April 15th is the preliminary budget, and then the final budget is due in June.
Right, that's when the whole budget in particular,
That is the whole
yes, because
budget.
what they're going to be asking is, once we submit, then we get feedback, like you need to work on this,
Yes.
that, and the other. We submit back and forth, and then, of course, the other title for other particular funding, but our budget, what's it called, budget analyst, our budget analyst, they already knew they were sending a lot of early dates. There was a lot of grumbling from different districts when they announced how early, but nonetheless, they knew it was early, so they are going to be working with the districts and anticipate they'll be working with us.
Okay, last item on the agenda is adjournment. So moved to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.